Chapter 21:19. No matter how he thought about it, Yang Kai couldn't come up with a plausible explanation. He hadn't been in the star boundary for a long time and had only come into contact with a few people from the Emperor realm. If he had really seen this woman before, he would definitely have an impression of her. Then, there were only two explanations for the current situation. First, the other party was handling some matters here and he and Qin Chaoyang accidentally broke in. Second, the other party was waiting for him and Qin Chaoyang here. The second situation was basically impossible, so it should be the first one, right? Just as Yang Kai's thoughts were racing, the woman in red suddenly opened her mouth and said in an ethereal and pleasant voice, speaking to this queen while hiding in this ship, "You're quite bold." The corners of her mouth were full of smiles, but her eyes were bone-chilling cold. Speaking up to here, she raised her hand slightly and snapped her fingers. A scorching force suddenly appeared and a fist-sized fireball suddenly appeared in front of her. After a slight tremor, it shot directly towards the ship. Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang's expressions changed greatly at the same time and they flew out without thinking. Boom! With a burst of sound, the huge ship was directly engulfed in monstrous flames. Qin Chaoyang was hit by this terrifying wave of power and directly fainted, falling from mid-air onto the grass. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Yang Kai also felt a burning pain on his back, as if several of his ribs were broken. He regained his footing and looked back, only to see the entire ship wrapped in raging flames and burning. In the blink of an eye, it was reduced to ashes. "My artifact!" Yang Kai shouted. His heart ached to death. He finally had a flight artifact that could be used as a means of transportation, and its grade was also quite good, but he didn't expect that the first time he went on a long journey, it would be destroyed by this inexplicable woman from the Emperor realm. Hearing Yang Kai's words, the woman in red raised the corners of her mouth again and an imperceptible smile flashed across her cold eyes as she said lightly, "Boy, instead of worrying about your artifact, shouldn't you be worrying about it? Shouldn't you be more worried about your own life? Senior, who are you? Why did you attack us?" Yang Kai turned his head to look at her and shouted. The anger in his heart had reached its peak. The other party was a master who was at least a second-order Emperor Realm master, yet she had destroyed his artifact just because of a disagreement. Moreover, from her tone, it didn't seem like she was willing to give up and even wanted to attack him. Naturally, Yang Kai couldn't bear it any longer. "Who am I? You don't need to know." The woman in red smiled. That smile was enough to turn all living things upside down. It was unknown what kind of divine technique she had used, but in just a few steps, she had arrived within 10 feet of Yang Kai. Then, she gently raised her jade-like hand and pointed it at Yang Kai's position. Then, she continued, "It's just that this queen doesn't like the sight of you." At this point, her jade-like hand slapped down. The laws of heaven and earth suddenly froze. Under the boundless pressure, Yang Kai's bones began to creak. It was as if he was about to be crushed into a meat patty by the terrifying pressure. "Are you crazy?" Yang Kai's face was extremely ugly. He never thought that he would one day encounter such an unexpected disaster. Just because the other party didn't like him, she wanted to kill him. As he spoke, the source chi in his body surged and a four-fingered sword appeared in his hand. He shouted in a low voice, "Million swords, one man holds the pass." Sword light flashed. Sword chi hummed. Asterisk kai 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 kai. Asterisk at this moment, the myriad swords seemed to have turned into countless swords. They densely surrounded Yang Kai and shot into the sky like a swarm of locusts. "Oh! An emperor artifact." A look of surprise flashed across the woman in red's beautiful eyes, but she didn't take it to heart. She just ridiculed, "With such a weak cultivation, how much of the emperor artifact's power can you display?" Asterisk hong 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 hong. Asterisk as she spoke, dazzling lights burst out in the sky. It was the collision between the countless sword chi and the invisible pressure. However, Yang Kai had only refined the myriad sword for a short time, and his cultivation wasn't very high. So, although the countless sword chi seemed fierce, it was actually weak inside. As soon as it came into contact with the boundless pressure, it dissipated. The terrifying pressure continued to press down, directly covering the place where Yang Kai was standing. "It doesn't matter how much of its power I can display. What's important is, I didn't expect that sword to block your divine technique. Yang Kai's voice suddenly sounded behind the woman in red. He held the sword with both hands, pushed his brute force, and slashed at the woman in red's slender neck. The woman in red seemed to be taken aback as she cried out, "Teleportation? Space Force. This is really interesting." As she spoke, she actually turned around and stared at Yang Kai with a smile. She had no intention of dodging. That sword had directly cut through her neck and cut her body into two. Yang Kai didn't show the slightest joy after succeeding. Instead, he retreated as if he had been stung by a scorpion. At the same time, the woman in red appeared next to where he was originally standing and pointed at his afterimage. "You can dodge that." The woman in red frowned and murmured, "This queen has underestimated you." As soon as she finished speaking, her face changed slightly and she frowned as she looked around. A dark black hole had appeared where she was standing, and a terrifying suction force was coming from it. On the other side, Yang Kai formed a seal with his hands and gritted his teeth as he shouted, "Exile." With these tricks. The woman in red smiled indifferently. "You want to deal with this queen?" With a wave of her hand, the black hole disappeared. Yang Kai smiled bitterly and stood in place without moving, simply putting away the myriad sword. "What? Giving up resistance?" The woman in red looked at Yang Kai with interest and ridiculed. "I can't beat you, so what's the point of fighting?" Yang Kai's expression was indifferent. "Then are you ready to die?" The woman in red giggled. Yang Kai said, "Meaningless resistance will only increase the pain. Senior, please give me a quick death. But before that, I want to ask, why are you doing this to me? What did I do to offend you? Didn't I tell you? This queen just doesn't like you." The woman in red replied. "Crazy woman." Yang Kai said bitterly. "PFFF." Somewhere in the void, a hidden figure was leisurely sipping tea. Hearing Yang Kai's words, he immediately spat out a mouthful of tea. And almost sprayed it onto the face of a young girl opposite him. The young girl didn't notice it and just looked nervously at Yang Kai and the woman in red, anxiously begging, "Uncle Lee, can you let me go? I'll go back to the island with you obediently. Why are you looking for trouble with Big Brother Yang? He's only in the First Order Dao Source realm. How can he be your opponent?" "No, no." The man called Uncle Lee by the young girl shook his head slowly and corrected, "It's not Uncle Lee looking for trouble with this little brat. It's your Auntie Fong looking for trouble with him. It has nothing to do with Uncle Lee. Uncle Lee is just here drinking tea." "Why? Auntie Fong has never seen Big Brother Yang. Why is she looking for trouble with him?" the young girl asked anxiously. "Xiao Qi." Uncle Lee showed a weathered look and said earnestly, "The outside world is very complicated. The men outside are also very cunning. Your Auntie Fong is doing this for your own good." Mo Xiao Qi heard this and pouted. "I don't care. Uncle Lee, if you don't call Auntie Fong back, I will. I will tell Auntie Fong that you peeked at her bathing." Hearing this, Uncle Lee's expression changed drastically. His face suddenly turned pale. Cold sweat dripped down from his forehead as he said, "Little Seven, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Your Uncle Lee is a righteous man. When have I ever done such a despicable thing? All right, it was only that one time. However, I didn't see anything and was dragged back by you. Little girl, you have a good memory. You were only 4 years old at that time. Don't change the subject. I'm asking you, do you agree or not?" Mo Xiao Qi snorted. "If you don't agree, I will have to tell Auntie Fong about that incident in dozens of sections and slowly tell her about it for a few days. Great aunt, please spare me." Uncle Lee's face turned bitter. "Please let me go. Why do you have to make things difficult for me? You agree?" Mo Xiao Qi looked at Uncle Lee coldly. Uncle Lee sighed. If it was just now, Uncle Lee might have been able to help you, but now what? That little brat dared to call your Auntie Fong a crazy woman. He's dead. Uncle Lee gloated. "Ah, don't." Mo Xiao Qi was startled and turned her head to look. Sure enough, she saw Auntie Fong's angry appearance, her beautiful eyes blooming with a cold light. Mo Xiao Qi was most afraid of seeing Auntie Fong like this. "Little brat, What did you just say? The woman in red seemed to be smiling sweetly, but Yang Kai could feel the bone-chilling coldness in her words. Now that things had developed to this point, Yang Kai was ready to throw caution to the wind. If this woman really dared to kill him, he would just release the gold and silver seal on his abdomen and give her a big surprise. At that time, even if he was no match for her, he could still run. He didn't know if he could escape. It was just that at that time, he wouldn't have the power to seal the demonic sense and the boundless demonic chi again. The sealing power contained in the firmament tree also needed time to accumulate. Crazy woman. Yang Kai raised his head slightly and glared at the woman in red. Ha ha. The woman in red laughed instead of getting angry. In the next moment, her voice suddenly became sharp. Do you believe I won't kill you right now? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, Oh? That means, you don't want to kill me? Speaking of this, his expression relaxed and he smiled. Then I find it strange. You are a third-order Emperor Realm Master, but instead of doing business, you came here to block my way. What do you want? I have never seen you before, so I don't have any deep hatred for you. The woman in red sneered, You think you're so smart. However, Yang Kai's next words caused her expression to change drastically. Hello, Auntie Fong. A look of surprise immediately appeared on the woman in red's face. She didn't expect Yang Kai to expose her identity. She hurriedly looked at a certain spot in the void, where Uncle Lee spread his hands, indicating that it had nothing to do with him. Auntie Fong, right? Although Yang Kai was asking, his tone was basically affirmative. At the same time, he glanced in the direction the woman in red was looking at and waved to the void, shouting with a smile, Xiao Qi. Chapter 21:20. Up in the void, Uncle Lee, who had hidden himself, looked at Yang Kai down below with some surprise and whistled frivolously. This little brat, he's quite thoughtful. Big brother Yang knows I'm here? Mo Xiao Qi was also stunned. Looking at Yang Kai, who was greeting her not far away, she hurriedly responded, but no matter how hard she tried, her voice could not reach Yang Kai's ears. The void was sealed by a powerful force, isolating them from the outside world. Mo Xiao Qi suddenly became anxious. On the other side, Yang Kai smiled and said, Xiao Qi, it's good that you can see me. Go home obediently, if fate wills it, we will meet again. Oh. Mo Xiao Qi nodded, okay. She had originally felt a sense of loss because she had not been able to see Kai Yang one last time before she left, but after hearing this sentence, all of that disappeared. She smiled happily. Yang Kai turned his head again and looked at the woman in red, Auntie Fong. Who is Auntie Fong? Who are you calling Auntie Fong? The woman in red looked at Yang Kai coldly. Senior, try calling me that again. Yang Kai took a deep breath and said, Master, I probably know why you are blocking my way, don't think you're so smart. The woman in red coldly snorted, interrupting Yang Kai's words. Yang Kai was stunned for a few breaths before frowning. You still don't want to admit it. In that case, then, at this point, he suddenly looked up into the void and declared softly with a tender look on his face, Xiao Qi, go home obediently and wait for Big Brother Yang to collect the betrothal gifts. Then he will come and marry you. The woman in red's face suddenly changed. She shouted, Boy, you dare. Before she could finish speaking, she suddenly seemed to realize something and ground her teeth. You're very treacherous. Only now did she realize that Yang Kai's words just now had not reached Mo Xiao Qi's ears at all, but had been deliberately said to her, and her reaction had obviously confirmed his previous guess. Yes. This consort is Little Seven's Aunt Fong. The woman in red saw that she had failed to play the fool, so she admitted it directly. She stared at Yang Kai and said, Boy, I don't care where you are from, and whether you have a bright future or not, but Xiao Qi is not someone you can covet. Remember this. Master, are you here to warn me not to be a toad that wants to eat swan meat? Yang Kai said calmly. If that's the case, you should have said it earlier. At least you have some self-awareness. The woman in red snorted. Since you're so sensible, this consort doesn't want to bully the weak. Remember this consort's words. If there comes a day when you have any improper thoughts towards Xiao Qi, this consort will definitely make you regret being born into this world. Master's threat, it's so soft and weak. Yang Kai smiled faintly. But Master, please don't worry. Little Seven and I are just friends. That would be for the best. The woman in red nodded in satisfaction. Young Kai smiled again. He said, compared to young and inexperienced girls, I prefer beautiful and mature women, such as, "Milord, you really make me drool." Thut. In the void, Uncle Lee spat out another mouthful of tea. His jaw seemed to be dislocated as he opened his mouth wide. After a while, he came back to his senses. With a face full of cold sweat, he said, "She was molested. Ninth young lady was molested." Saying so, he couldn't help laughing out loud. A little brat actually dares to take liberties with ninth young lady. If this matter were to be known to the great emperors would definitely laugh to their heart's content. Big brother Yang, how can you say that? Opposite him, Mo Xiaoqi also blushed and spat, "You're too shameless. You like someone like me?" The woman in red's expression was slightly strange as she looked at Yang Kai with interest and said, "Based on your presumptuous remarks just now, this queen can pull out your hateful tongue, but..." She suddenly changed the topic and smiled sweetly, her beautiful eyes overflowing with charm as she said softly, "This queen likes your straightforwardness very much. When your cultivation surpasses mine one day, this queen may give you a chance to pursue me. Haha, then it's a deal." Yang Kai laughed. The woman in red stared deeply at Yang Kai for a while before she sneered, "You overestimate yourself." Saying so, her tender body flickered and she suddenly disappeared. "Hey, master, you destroyed my flight artifact and just left like this, isn't that a bit unkind?" Yang Kai shouted into the void. Just as he spoke, a blue light suddenly flew over from the distance and stopped in front of him in a flash. Yang Kai looked over and found that the thing wrapped in the blue light was a miniature wooden boat about 3 inches in size, exuding the energy fluctuations of a Dao Source grade artifact. "You really compensated me." Yang Kai was a little surprised, but he didn't refuse and directly put the wooden boat into his space ring. Then, he stood in the void and waited quietly. After a while, he suddenly shuddered, and cold sweat dripped from his forehead. In an instant, his clothes were drenched in sweat, and his whole body was like a fish out of water. He opened his mouth and gasped for breath. Although the confrontation with the woman in red wasn't thrilling, it was definitely not peaceful either. After all, she was a third-order Emperor Realm Master. She was many realms above Yang Kai. Even if Yang Kai really released the gold and silver seal on his lower abdomen, he wasn't completely confident that he could escape from her hands. So, he could only take a risk. Fortunately, at the critical moment, he suddenly guessed the other party's true identity. It wasn't difficult to figure this out. He had no grievances with this woman in red, but she, a third-order Emperor Realm Master, deliberately came here to find trouble with him. Obviously, there was a reason. As for Yang Kai, he could only think of Mo Xiaoqi. Before Xiaoqi left Maplewood City, she left a jade slip to tell Yang Kai that Auntie Feng had come to catch her. With Mo Xiaoqi's third-order origin king cultivation, how could she escape from Auntie Feng's pursuit? She would definitely be caught and brought home. After catching Mo Xiaoqi, Auntie Feng might have learned of his existence from her. Auntie Feng deliberately stopped here to test him. Yang Kai could understand Auntie Feng's approach. A young girl who was ignorant of the world often mentioned a strange man. As an elder, Auntie Feng naturally had to come to see Yang Kai's character and see if Mo Xiaoqi was deceived by a shameless person. The next step was simple. Since he knew the other party's identity, Yang Kai naturally understood that Mo Xiaoqi must be hidden nearby. As for the woman in red, it was absolutely impossible for her to kill him. However, when she said those words before she left, she seemed to have used some kind of soul secret technique, and he was almost fooled by her seductive charm. Fortunately, Auntie Feng also underestimated the power of Yang Kai's soul, so he was able to use the power of the soul-warming lotus to resolve the situation. Otherwise, if Mo Xiaoqi really saw his embarrassing state, she would probably never have any contact with Yang Kai again. She should be gone, right? Yang Kai muttered to himself. He was a little exhausted, but he still hurried in the direction of Qin Chaoyang. After a brief investigation, he found that Qin Chaoyang had only fainted. There was not a single wound on his body. It seemed that Auntie Feng had deliberately knocked out Qin Chaoyang with the first blow to create an opportunity for her to talk to Yang Kai alone. In the distance, Uncle Li used the great divine technique to carry Mo Xiaoqi and Auntie Feng through the void. Mo Xiaoqi wore a sullen look. The two masters from the Emperor realm ignored her. From time to time, Uncle Li glanced sideways at Auntie Feng. It seemed that she had something to say. What do you want to say? Just say it. What are you looking at? Auntie Feng glared at Uncle Li angrily. The latter laughed awkwardly and said, I'm just curious. How did that boy neutralize your soul summoning technique? How much of your strength did you use? 10% or 5%? Auntie Feng was silent for a moment before saying, 20%. Are you kidding me? Uncle Li's eyes widened. Auntie Feng said, that boy's soul power is a little strange. He only has the cultivation of the first order Dao Source realm, but his soul power is comparable to the third order Dao Source realm. And what? He seems to have some powerful artifact to protect himself. Most of my soul summoning technique's power was offset by that thing. Even you didn't notice what kind of artifact it was. It exists in his knowledge sea, unless I break open his head and take a closer look. Can you stop talking about such a scary topic? I'm right here, Mo Xiaoqi interjected from the side. She was proving her existence. And that boy. Auntie Feng didn't pay attention to Mo Xiaoqi at all. Instead, she looked at Uncle Li with interest and said with a smile, his attainments in the Tao of space are not low. He can actually use a secret technique similar to a black hole. I remember that even you couldn't do this back then. What are you trying to say? Uncle Li glanced sideways at Auntie Feng. Auntie Feng smiled tenderly, it's rare to find a suitable one. Haven't you thought about accepting him as your disciple? In all fairness, this boy is quite good. Even the top sect in the star boundary may not be able to cultivate such a talent. TSK tilde Uncle Li sneered. What's so fun about having a disciple? After taking him in, I still have to spend a lot of effort teaching him. I still have to worry about him, afraid that he will die young and whatnot. If he was a beautiful girl, I might consider raising him. Unfortunately, TSK, that's because he doesn't have this blessing, Auntie Feng smiled. That's right. Mo Xiaoqi suddenly clapped her hands and said, Uncle Li is proficient in the Tao of space, so is big brother Yang. Uncle Li, why don't you accept him as your disciple? He can also inherit your mantle. I refuse. Uncle Li didn't even think about it. Mo Xiaoqi glanced at him, then turned to look at Auntie Feng and said, Auntie Feng, when I was 4 years old, Uncle Li, oh. Uncle Li's face changed as he clapped his hands and shouted, this king suddenly feels that taking in a disciple is not a bad idea. If I'm in a good mood, I'll pull him over and teach him, if I'm in a bad mood, I'll pull him over and teach him, and if I'm in a bad mood, I'll pull him over and teach him. Uncle Li, do you really think so? Mo Xiaoqi looked at him excitedly. Uncle Li nodded seriously. When Uncle Li sees him next time, he will definitely accept him as a disciple. At the same time, he secretly thought, when this king returns, I'll enter retreat for 1,000 years. Xiaoqi will definitely forget about this matter by then. Chapter 21:21. It took 2 hours for Qin Chaoyang to wake up. After being stunned for a while, he suddenly remembered what happened before he fainted. His expression changed drastically as he looked around. After finding that Yang Kai was safe and sound, he breathed a sigh of relief. Naturally, he was very curious about what the woman in red wanted to do and what had happened while he was unconscious. Yang Kai didn't tell the truth. After all, this matter involved the origin and identity of Mo Xiaoqi, so he casually made up a story, saying that the woman in red mistook him for someone else. Qin Chaoyang was skeptical, but since both of them were unharmed, he didn't get to the bottom of it and continued to fly in the direction of Azure Sun Temple. Yang Kai's ship artifact was destroyed. Yang Kai didn't have time to refine the small wooden boat artifact that the woman in red gave him before she left, so Qin Chaoyang could only summon his own flight artifact. It was a carriage-like artifact, a Dao Source grade low-rank artifact. Although it wasn't as big as Yang Kai's ship, its speed wasn't much slower. Yang Kai took the time to refine the wooden boat artifact. The woman in red was a third-order Emperor Realm Master, so the artifact she gave Yang Kai was a Dao Source grade high-rank artifact. Moreover, There were many barriers attached to it. Although it had no offensive power, its defense was impregnable, which made Yang Kai very satisfied. He was going to enter the Four Seasons realm, so he would definitely need to use a flight artifact, so he seized the time to refine it. Nothing unexpected happened along the way, and after more than 10 days, the two entered the sphere of influence of Azure Sun Temple. Azure Sun Temple was a famous sect in the Southern Territory. And Orthodoxy Temple. Heavenly Martial Holy Land and the other two sects were equal in status and strength, second only to Star Soul Palace. Their headquarters was located in a continuous mountain range, and there were tens of thousands of disciples and countless masters. Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang didn't know why that master had appointed Qin Chaoyang to come to Azure Sun Temple in exchange for a spot to enter the Four Seasons realm, but since the other party had said so, it probably had some relationship with Azure Sun Temple. As soon as the two of them stepped into the Azure Sun mountain range, they were shocked by the spirit qi contained within the mountain range. The rich spiritual qi of heaven and earth rushed towards him. With the fragrance of flowers and plants, it made people feel refreshed. The effects of cultivating in such a good environment would definitely be extraordinary. Yang Kai estimated that there should be a lot of good earth veins under the Azure Sun mountain range. Even the best earth veins should exist. Otherwise, there would not be such a rich world energy. Moreover, this was merely the periphery. If one were to go deep into the center, what sort of scene would it be? He was looking around. He was secretly shocked by the heritage of Azure Sun Temple, but was surprised to find that Qin Chaoyang was a little nervous and reserved. After thinking about it for a moment, he understood. After all, this was the headquarters of the top sect in the Southern Territory. Qin Chaoyang, the patriarch of a small family in Maplewood City, may be regarded as a top figure in Maplewood City, but here, he may not even be as good as an ordinary disciple. Naturally, there was a lot of psychological pressure, fearing that he would make a mistake or lose his manners when he met someone. After all, he came here to ask for help, so naturally, he was very nervous. In contrast, Yang Kai seemed to have no pressure at all. It was as if he was on a scenic tour, taking in the beautiful scenery along the way. Suddenly, Yang Kai's figure paused and said, "Brother Qin, someone is coming." Ah! Qin Chaoyang seemed to be a little distracted and was shocked when he heard this. He also stopped and stood quietly in place. After a while, two streams of light suddenly shot from a distance and landed accurately not far in front of the two people, looking at them coldly. One of them had a fat head, big ears, and a simple and fat body. The fat on his face was piled together, and it was almost impossible to see where his eyes were. The other person was a man with a blue face. He didn't know if it was his original skin color or because he cultivated some kind of secret technique. In any case, he didn't look like a normal person. The cultivation of these two people was not high. One was a second-order origin king, and the other was a third-order origin king. But as a patrolling disciple, such cultivation was enough to show the powerful heritage of Azure Sun Temple. "Who are you, and why are you trespassing into my Azure Sun Temple?" The fat man didn't show any signs of fear because of the difference in cultivation. On the contrary, he had an arrogant look on his face as he ordered Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang around. Yang Kai's heart moved, thinking to himself that a great sect was a great sect. If it was elsewhere, an Origin King realm cultivator would be trembling in fear in front of a Dao Source realm cultivator. But here, these two guys didn't show any fear. Instead, it seemed that their cultivation was lower than theirs. Qin Chaoyang was also a little surprised, but thinking that this was Azure Sun Temple, he was relieved. He quickly lowered his posture and cupped his fists. "Greetings, two little brothers. This old master is the patriarch of the Qin family in Maplewood City. This is," before he could introduce Yang Kai, the fat man frowned and said, "Maplewood City? Never heard of it. Never heard of it." The blue-faced man also looked impatient and said contemptuously, "It's probably some remote village." "Senior brother, you're right." The fat man touched his double chin with a look of approval. In the blink of an eye, he shouted at Qin Chaoyang, "Bumpkin, why don't you stay in Maple Leaf City? What are you doing in my Azure Sun Temple?" Bumpkin. Qin Chaoyang was shocked at the time. This fat man actually called him that in front of him. No one had ever called him that before. He couldn't help but feel a little angry, but now that he was under the eaves, he had to bow his head. He could only suppress the anger in his heart and smile apologetically. It's Maplewood City, not Maple Leaf City. Isn't it the same? The fat man said. Ian, it's the same. The blue-faced man also nodded. You haven't answered my question yet. What are you doing in Azure Sun Temple? If you don't answer quickly, you will be regarded as invaders. Don't blame my brother for being ruthless. As the fat man spoke, he opened up an attack posture with an agility that didn't match his body shape. We brothers are very powerful. Hurry up and tell us why you've come. The blue-faced man also struck a pose at the right time, as if he was about to start a fight if there was a disagreement. Wait. Qin Chaoyang was shocked. The two Origin Kings dared to take the initiative to show their intention to attack them. Although they were a little overconfident, this was the headquarters of Azure Sun Temple. Once a fight broke out, there would be masters coming. At that time, he and Yang Kai wouldn't be able to escape even if they had the means to reach the heavens. He chose his words carefully and said, "Two little brothers, don't be nervous. Brother Yang and I are not enemies of your temple. Whether we are enemies or not, brother and I have our own judgment." The fat man shouted in a low voice. Yes, it's not up to you to decide. Although the blue-faced man was the brother, he didn't seem to be a person who had his own opinion. Whatever the fat junior brother said, he followed. Qin Chaoyang sighed and said helplessly, "This old master came here to ask for an audience with your temple's temple master when." Hearing this, the fat junior brother and the blue-faced brother were both taken aback and were silent for a while. After a while, the fat junior brother turned to look at his brother and said, "Brother, did I hear wrong? This bumpkin just said that he wanted to see the temple master." Brother also heard it. The blue-faced brother nodded. Presumptuous. The fat junior brother suddenly became angry and shouted, "You bumpkin, I gave you 3 points and you want to open a dye house. How dare you use this uncle as an example? Take this." In the blink of an eye, the chubby junior brother's body trembled as he formed a seal with both hands. Activating the power in his body, he pushed it forward, causing a surge of power to surge out and strike towards Qin Chaoyang. The blue-faced brother's reaction wasn't slow either. He directly took out a long sword artifact and with a flash of sword light, he went straight for Yang Kai's face. His moves were big and wide. To put it bluntly, they were full of flaws. "What are you two doing, little brothers?" Qin Chaoyang was shocked. Pushing his source chi, he directly dissolved the fat junior brother's attack. He didn't expect that the other party would immediately kill him after he said what he came for. Fortunately, the strength of these two people wasn't high. With his Dao Source realm cultivation, there was no need for him to be afraid. On the other side, Yang Kai stretched out his hand and caught the blue-faced man's fierce-looking long sword in his hand. Both of them just broke each other's killing moves and didn't fight back. Ah! Seeing this scene, the fat junior brother exclaimed, "Not good, brother. These two are Dao Source realm cultivators. Retreat quickly." It seemed that only now did he understand that Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang's cultivation was higher than his. Oh! The blue-faced brother also came back to his senses at this moment. Using some kind of movement skill, he ignored his long sword artifact and quickly retreated to the junior brother's side. Great enemies. Brother, leave quickly, these two aren't easy to deal with. The fat junior brother looked a little flustered. After he finished speaking, he immediately ran away. The blue-faced man followed closely behind. In the distance, the fat junior brother's voice came from the other side, "If you have the guts, just wait for me. When the masters of my palace arrive, they will teach you a lesson." This. Qin Chaoyang was stunned, standing in place with a helpless expression on his face. Yang Kai's face was also full of black lines. After thinking for a while, he held the long sword between his fingers in the palm of his hand. "Little brother Yang, Qin Chaoyang's expression was flustered, as if he wanted to retreat. "Let's go inside. If it's as expected, we should be able to see the real deal soon." Yang Kai smiled slightly. "Is this okay?" Qin Chaoyang was hesitant. "If we really escape, it will be like yellow mud falling into our crotch. Once we are wanted by Azure Sun Temple, I'm afraid you and I won't be able to establish ourselves in the Southern Territory in the future. It's better to take the initiative to meet them and explain to them. Brother Yang's words are reasonable, but I'm afraid they won't believe us. Qin Chaoyang said worriedly. Yang Kai laughed and said, the two we met before, their way of thinking, is a bit unique. I guess the others in Azure Sun Temple should also be aware of it. If we explain it well, they should be able to understand. I hope so. Qin Chaoyang nodded. After thinking about it, the tension and fear in his heart disappeared a lot. He moved forward again with Yang Kai. Chapter 21-22. This time, Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang didn't go far before they noticed that there were Dao Source Realm Masters coming over. They should be the helpers invited by the two Azure Sun Temple disciples before. These people were extremely fast, and there was more than one. There were 4 or 5 of them, and the leader was a second-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. Yang Kai waited quietly and didn't move forward. Qin Chaoyang also looked nervous. Not long after, a light flashed and a group of cultivators appeared in front of the two. Deacon Dao, these are the 2 guys who trespassed into my Azure Sun mountain range and talked nonsense. Brother and I were no match for them, so we retreated in shame. Look, that person is still holding Brother's long sword in his hand. The fat junior brother and the blue-faced brother who appeared before were also among these people. As soon as they appeared, the fat junior brother explained to a semi-old man while pointing at Yang Kai. The semi-old man looked about 50 years old. Half of his hair was white. He wasn't tall, but his eyes were shining. He looked very capable. This person should be the Deacon Dao mentioned by the fat junior brother. A second-order Dao Source Realm cultivator only served as a deacon in Azure Sun Temple. The higher positions of protector and elder should be held by a more powerful cultivator. Yang Kai thought secretly in his heart. As soon as the fat junior brother's voice fell, the blue-faced brother also shouted, "Hey, country bumpkin, return this uncle's artifact to me, or I'll teach you a lesson." Yang Kai's mouth twitched when he heard this. He didn't have the intention of taking the other party's artifact for himself. This longsword was just an Origin King grade high-rank artifact. The reason why he held it in his hand. He wanted to return it to this blue-faced man when he saw him again. But when the other party said this, he was in a dilemma. He couldn't return it, but he couldn't not return it. If he returned it, it would seem too cowardly. If he didn't return it, it would be an obvious provocation. This made Yang Kai feel a headache coming on. He couldn't wait to tear that green-faced man's mouth open. Don't be rude. Fortunately, Deacon Dao seemed to be a reasonable person. He didn't blindly believe in his own sect's disciples. He probably knew the fat junior brother and the green-faced brother very well and knew that their style of doing things was somewhat different from ordinary people. As he spoke, he glanced at Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang. Suddenly, he had an idea. Although the cultivation of the 2 first-order Dao Source Realm cultivators wasn't high, it wasn't low either, compared to the cultivator outside. A Dao Source Realm cultivator was still considered a master. This deacon already has a rough understanding of what happened. I wonder if the 2 of you have anything to say? Deacon Dao asked. Qin Chaoyang hurriedly cupped his fist and said, the head of the Qin family in Maplewood City, Qin Chaoyang, greets Deacon Dao. Brother Yang and I took the liberty to come to Azure Sun Temple, not to cause trouble. It's just that the 2 disciples of your temple suddenly took the initiative to attack. Brother Yang and I were forced into a corner and could only defend. Deacon Dao, please understand. Maplewood City. When Deacon Dao heard this, his brow suddenly frowned slightly, and he said lightly, recently, this deacon seems to have heard the 3 words Maplewood City often. The other 2 Dao Source Realm cultivators standing next to him also gently nodded. First, the divine spirit Luan Feng appeared in Clear Jade Mountain near Maplewood City, then the ancient great demon's seal was broken, the demonic chi besieged the city, and so on. These things were not secrets, and those who were interested could naturally find out. Did something happen in Maplewood City again? Deacon Dao asked with some surprise. He thought that Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang were messengers from Maplewood City who came to ask for help. Hearing him say so, Qin Chaoyang immediately understood that the other party did not know the purpose of his visit. It must be because the fat junior brother and the green-faced brother did not explain. Qin Chaoyang said, "It's not about Maplewood City. This Qin is here for personal matters." Personal matters? Deacon Dao frowned slightly when he heard the words, and asked, "Who do you have a relationship with in my Azure Sun Temple?" "No." Qin Chaoyang shook his head. "Then you want to join my Azure Sun Temple?" Deacon Dao asked again. "Not really." Deacon Dao suddenly became a little impatient. At this moment, the fat junior brother leaned over and whispered in Deacon Dao's ear. A cold light flashed in Deacon Dao's eyes. He stared at the two people opposite him and nodded, "So that's how it is. Such shameless boasting, no wonder they would attack you." After a pause, he said, "It's not easy for you to cultivate to the Dao Source realm, and it's your first offense. Each of you leave an arm and leave." Qin Chaoyang's body trembled. His eyes widened as he looked in front of him in disbelief. Yang Kai also frowned, secretly feeling that things were a bit difficult. Although Deacon Dao's thinking was normal, his style of doing things was straightforward. He did not give them a chance to explain at all. Deacon Dao saw the look on their faces and chuckled. "Why? Reluctant? If you can't bear to, this deacon doesn't mind helping you." "Deacon Dao!" Yang Kai shouted suddenly. "What else do you have to say?" Deacon Dao turned his gaze to Yang Kai. Yang Kai chuckled and said, "Is Deacon Dao asking us to break our arms just because Brother Qin and I want to see Temple Master Wen? What kind of logic is this? Is this how Azure Sun Temple treats its guests? The top sect in the Southern Territory is really better than seeing it once." His sarcastic tone made several people on the opposite side glare at him angrily. Deacon Dao even sneered and said, "You trespassed into my Azure Sun mountain range, so this deacon took your lives. Now that you are not dead, you should be grateful and leave an arm behind. If you continue to be long-winded, you don't have to leave." He had a confident expression on his face. It was not surprising. He was a second-order Dao Source realm cultivator. Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang's cultivation in the first-order Dao Source realm were obvious at a glance. Deacon Dao did not feel that they were his opponents. What's more, he had two first-order Dao Source realm companions by his side. Yang Kai said, "Just because of our request?" "Yes. That's strange. Is there a rule in your temple that says outsiders are not allowed to see Temple Master Wen?" "Of course not, but what qualifications do you have to ask to see Master Temple Master?" The Azure Sun Temple Master, Wen Zishan, was a third-order Emperor Realm Master. He was a figure standing at the peak of the martial Dao. Not just anyone could see him. If you wanted to see him, you had to be at least in the Emperor Realm. Yang Kai, a first-order Dao Source realm cultivator, made such a request. It was simply unbearable. It was like a sloppy beggar asking to see the noble empress of a country. Those guards would naturally rather kill the beggar. They could not let him tarnish the eyes of the empress. "Since Brother Qin and I have come here from afar, we naturally have a reason to see Temple Master Wen." Yang Kai said in a deep voice, "How about this, Deacon Dao, you report this matter to Temple Master Wen. As for whether he will see us or not, it is up to him." "Presumptuous. Temple Master Wen Zishan is busy every day. How can he see a nobody like you?" Deacon Dao snorted coldly. Yang Kai looked at him with great interest and said, "Deacon Dao, are you saying this because you can't see Temple Master Wen, right?" After saying that, he did not wait for him to deny it. Yang Kai looked like he was enlightened and said to himself, "Yes, with Deacon Dao's status, it is not so easy to see Temple Master Wen. How about this, Deacon Dao? You go and report to the elder or protector that you can speak to. How about letting them tell Temple Master Wen? I don't need you to teach me how to do things." Deacon Dao seemed to be a little angry. Obviously, Yang Kai was right. Yang Kai remained unmoved and said indifferently, "Deacon Dao, old Brother Qin and I came here not only to ask to see Temple Master Wen, but also because we have something to rely on. Are you sure you want to drive us out of the Azure Sun mountain range?" When Deacon Dao heard the words, his eyes couldn't help but shrink. Yang Kai gave him the feeling that he was too calm. It was definitely not what a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator could show. It seemed that the Temple Master would really meet them. If they really brought any important information to the Temple Master, he would be driven out and driven out. Yet, Zhongxian had stopped him here and chased him out. If the Hall Master were to find out about this matter in the future, he would not be able to get away with it either. Thinking of this, Deacon Dao suppressed the displeasure in his heart and said, "What do you two rely on that the Temple Master must see? Let me hear it. If this is the case, I will report it for you." Yang Kai heard the words and glanced at Qin Chaoyang. Qin Chaoyang knew that things had come to this point. He had to come up with something, otherwise he couldn't even enter the gate of the Azure Sun Temple. Yang Kai reached out and took out the Jade Maiden Beggar token from his space ring. Using a little bit of his strength, he tossed it to Deacon Dao and said, "Sir Deacon only needs to pass this thing to Temple Master when and he will naturally understand." When he said this, Qin Chaoyang was still calm, but he was secretly praying in his heart. He prayed that the master he met back then was not joking with him. If this Jade Girl Beggar token didn't work, then he and Yang Kai would really be doomed today. "What is this?" Deacon Dao reached out and took the token, put it on the palm of his hand and looked at it carefully. The other two Dao Source Realm Masters also leaned over to take a look. Soon, Deacon Dao's face changed from the initial bewilderment to puzzlement. Then, he was stunned and angry. He shouted, "How dare you? Do you think you can deceive me by randomly carving a nondescript token? I think you are not awake yet." Deacon Dao's reaction was completely within Yang Kai's expectations. Anyone who saw this token would have doubts in their heart. When he first saw this Jade Beggar token, he also didn't take it seriously. Only after he personally tested it, did he know that the one who made this token was indeed an expert. Moreover, it was an expert beyond his imagination. There was no reason for such a master to play with Qin Chaoyang, a Dao Source Realm cultivator, so Yang Kai felt that this token should be real, symbolizing identity and status. So he smiled confidently and said, "Deacon Dao, although this token is a bit strange, it was not casually carved by me. It was made by a peerless master. It doesn't matter if you don't understand, I believe Master Temple Master will understand." Good, 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 you two bastards. Do you really think this deacon is so easy to talk to? I wonder if you will still think so after your limbs are cut off and your scalps are peeled off. Deacon Dao's face suddenly became ferocious, and as he spoke, he gripped the token fiercely. Then, a shocking scene occurred. Asterisk catcher. Asterisk the token broke. Chapter 21-23. The Jade Girl Beggar token, which was unscathed by Yang Kai's brute force, and Qin Chaoyang couldn't damage it at all, was easily crushed into 4 or 5 pieces by Deacon Dao. It was effortless. Yang Kai was dumbfounded. He stared at the front in a daze, and his mind was in chaos. Qin Chaoyang also looked like his jaw was dislocated. His mouth was open, and his eyes were wide open. His mind was in a mess. "Oh!" Deacon Dao sneered and threw away the pieces of the token in his hand. He said, "This kind of garbage, I can carve a few hundred pieces. How can garbage be used as a token? It's the biggest joke in the world. You two scums, what else do you have to say?" "Brother Qin." Yang Kai whispered, turned to look at him and said, "What's the situation?" He expected Qin Chaoyang to give him a reasonable explanation. Qin Chaoyang didn't respond. He stood there stupidly as if he had lost his soul. "I've been played." Kai Yang's heart was filled with anguish, as he cursed this so-called expert to his heart's content. That token didn't have an accident earlier or later, but when it was in the hands of Deacon Dao, it was obvious that the power attached to the token had disappeared. Otherwise, with Deacon Dao's strength, it was impossible to destroy the Jade Maiden Beggar token. Now, the token was broken, and the token was gone. They couldn't explain it clearly. Yang Kai was already considering whether to leave the southern territory after escaping from the Qingyang mountain range. Otherwise, with his strength, he would be targeted by such a huge monster sooner or later. "All disciples, listen to my order. Follow me to kill these 2 treacherous people on the spot. Let's show the power of the Divine Hall." Deacon Dao couldn't wait to give orders. The 2 first-order Dao Source Realm disciples responded and rushed forward aggressively. The fat junior brother and the green-faced brother seemed to have found a good time for revenge. They ignored the gap in cultivation and followed closely behind. "Brother Qin, let's go," Yang Kai shouted. Qin Chaoyang was still indifferent. He just stood there with his lips squirming. He muttered to himself as if he had lost consciousness. Broken. Broken. It seemed that the scene just now was quite a big blow to him. What was broken in front of him was not only a token, but also the only hope to save Qin Yu's life. At this critical moment, an inexplicable force suddenly appeared out of thin air. Time seemed to be frozen at this moment. In the sky, the clouds rose, the wind, and the thunder. The ripples of energy slowly spread out from the clouds in the sky. At this moment, Yang Kai, Qin Zhaoyang, Deacon Dao, and the others all felt a terrifying pressure. Not only them, but all the martial artists in the entire Azure Sun mountain range felt it. They trembled in fear because of this pressure. This is. On the main peak of the Qingyang mountain range, in a palace, a middle-aged man in a purple shirt who seemed to be in his 40s seemed to be cultivating some kind of secret technique. However, at the moment when the pressure fluctuated, he immediately opened his eyes. His eyes were overflowing with light. He suddenly looked in one direction. His eyesight seemed to be able to penetrate the void. He saw the scene that happened thousands of miles away. His face was dignified. After sensing for a moment, his face was a little shocked. How is it possible? At the same time, on another mountain peak, there were birds chirping and flowers fragrant. The environment was serene, as if it did not belong to the human world. It was magnificent. In the mountain peak, a dignified, beautiful woman also stood up suddenly. Her beautiful eyes stared into the distance. Her pretty face changed slightly. Without thinking, her delicate body shook and disappeared from the place. On the other side, an old man was sitting cross-legged. In front of him were many elite disciples of the Divine Hall. They were listening to the old man explain the martial Tao and heavenly Tao. Suddenly, the old man's voice stopped abruptly. He raised his head and looked in one direction. After a while, he slowly got up and flashed away, leaving a group of disciples bewildered. Similar scenes happened everywhere in the Azure Sun Temple. Those powerhouses of the Emperor realm, whether they were in seclusion or not, all sensed this terrifying power gathering. They rushed to the place of the incident from their residences to find out what was going on. At the edge of the Qingyang mountain range, the 7 people present, regardless of their cultivation, were all trembling. This had nothing to do with courage and will, but a complete suppression of power. The fat junior brother and the green-faced brother had weak cultivation. Their bones creaked. After holding on for a while, they both fainted. As for the 4 first-order Dao Source Realm cultivators present, they were also pushing the power in their bodies to resist the inexplicable pressure. Deacon Dao was the same. His face was filled with difficulty, and his body, which was not tall to begin with, seemed to be pressed under a mountain, his waist completely bent. "What is this? What kind of power is this?" Deacon Dao shouted in horror. Qin Chaoyang and the other 2 Dao Source Realm cultivators of the Azure Sun Temple were also full of awe and horror. Yang Kai's eyes rolled around, looking around. He wanted to release his divine sense to perceive the source of this power and pressure, but he found that his divine sense couldn't leave his body at all. This space seemed to be completely imprisoned. Hong, in the sky, a beam of light suddenly cast down, and a person appeared strangely. The light dissipated, and the person was imprinted in everyone's eyes. The person was wearing a wide bamboo hat on his head. The bamboo hat was slightly slanted, covering half of his face. His specific appearance couldn't be seen, but there was a jagged stubble on his chin. Coupled with the languid gaze that was faintly discernible through the edge of the bamboo hat, this person seemed to have a magical charm. The person was also dressed very ostentatiously. He was obviously a tall man with broad shoulders, but he was wearing a gaudy robe and a pair of deerskin boots on his feet. He looked a little out of place. As soon as this person appeared, Qin Chaoyang's eyes suddenly widened and he said in surprise, "Master." Yang Kai heard him shout and immediately understood that this person should be the owner of the token. Sure enough, as he guessed, this person's strength had reached the peak. He was definitely a 3rd-order Emperor Realm Master. The feeling coming from him seemed to be stronger than that of Auntie Fong. The most important thing was, this person was not a real person, but just a projection. Who is it? Deacon Dao was so scared that he almost peed his pants. If it weren't for the fact that he was in his own territory, he would have fled long ago. Even so, he was trembling all over. When he shouted, he didn't dare to look at the person for fear of angering him. Azure Sun Temple. The mysterious person raised his head slightly and glanced, then muttered to himself. He didn't mean to pay attention to Deacon Dao at all. Instead, he turned to look at Qin Chaoyang and said, I haven't seen you for more than 10 years, and you look so old. It seems that you have worked hard all these years. Master, Qin Chaoyang's eyes were full of tears, and after saying a sentence, he choked up and couldn't say anything. Since you are here, then feel free to make your request. The person smiled slightly, and his eyes suddenly fixed on Yang Kai. He said in surprise, You are here too. Yang Kai's face suddenly changed. He swallowed his saliva and said, Master, do you know me? He. That person laughed but didn't say anything. He pretended to be profound, which made people angry. Moreover, this projection of his only lasted for a few breaths of time before it showed signs of dissipating. Time's up, what a pity. With that said, the projection really disappeared in front of everyone. No one knew what he was feeling pity about. As soon as the projection disappeared, the various heavenly phenomena disappeared as well. Naturally, that sensational pressure also vanished without a trace. In the jungle, there was immediately the sound of people gasping for breath. Pa pa pa. There was the sound of something falling on the ground. Everyone heard the sound and turned their heads to look. They found that the thing that fell on the ground was the token fragments that Deacon Dao had crushed before. There were as many as 4 or 5 pieces, and they fell in the place where the mysterious expert disappeared. Seeing this scene, Deacon Dao's face turned pale. How could he not know that he had made a big mistake? The token that was crushed by him obviously had a great background. Otherwise, it would not be used as a medium to project the figure of such an expert. Perhaps the expert had already poured power into the token when he made it. Once the token was destroyed, a projection would appear. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Deacon Dao was panicking like a stray dog. He rolled and crawled, and he even fell on the way. He finally ran to the token fragments and reached out to pick them up. But the moment the token fragments were in his hand, they turned into powder and flowed through his fingertips. The wind blew, and the powder scattered. It's over, it's over. Deacon Dao saw this and his whole body stiffened. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, the sound of something breaking through the air came one after another, and figures suddenly appeared around the crowd. These figures were old and young, male and female, and they came from different directions. Each of them looked solemn, as if they were facing a great enemy. After arriving at the scene, they scanned with their divine thoughts, but their faces were full of doubts. Because the energy fluctuations and coercion they had sensed before were completely gone at this moment. The other 2 Dao Source realms of Azure Sun Temple hurriedly bowed when they saw these people. Subordinate greets Vice Temple Master, greets elders and protectors. These people were all masters of the Emperor Realm, the top fighting force of Azure Sun Temple. Yang Kai's gaze swept through these people, and after seeing a dignified and beautiful woman, his neck couldn't help shrinking as he cursed in his heart. That person was none other than Jiao Shueting, who he had fought with before. Although Yang Kai had predicted that he might have a chance to see this beautiful woman again when he came to Azure Sun Temple this time, he didn't expect it to be so soon. The two had fought before. Even though Yang Kai was wrapped in demonic chi at that time, and his face couldn't be seen, it would be over if Jiao Shueting noticed something. Yang Kai didn't want to see this woman the most. Who has been here? An old man who looked about 70 or 80 years old suddenly asked after sweeping his majestic gaze across the crowd. This old man's aura was as deep as the sea, and he was obviously much stronger than Jiao Shueting. He was similar to Xiao Yuyang, whom Yang Kai had met before. He should be a second-order Emperor Realm Master. Chapter 21-24. The old man asked, but the few disciples of Azure Sun Temple didn't know how to answer. The fat junior brother and the green-faced brother had already fainted, so they didn't see the scene projected by the master. Deacon Dao was still muttering to himself in a daze. The remaining 2 First-Order Dao Source Realm disciples couldn't say anything at all. "Are you all mute?" Seeing this, the old man couldn't help but snort coldly, looking displeased. "Dao Ming, what are you doing?" On the side, a middle-aged man in the First-Order Emperor realm looked at Deacon Dao and frowned. When the shout reached Deacon Dao's ears, it was like a sledgehammer hitting his heart. With a sudden shock, a mysterious force came out, causing Dao Ming to spit out a mouthful of blood. But with this, Dao Ming's slackened eyes finally refocused, and his frightened emotions calmed down. He looked around blankly, and after seeing the old man and the others, his body trembled and he shouted, "Subordinate greets Vice Temple Master, greets elders and protector. Don't be long-winded." The middle-aged man who used the soul secret technique to wake Dao Ming up shouted, "Tell me, what happened here, and who came here?" "Who came?" Dao Ming muttered as the terrifying and shocking scene from before abruptly appeared within his mind, and then he recalled the scene of the command token transforming into powder that flowed through his fingertips. He was shocked to the point his countenance couldn't help but go pale, and he directly knelt on the ground as he said in terror, "Lords, spare my life. This subordinate didn't do it on purpose." Seeing this, the old man slowly shook his head. "Let me do it." On the other side, a girl who looked only 17 or 18 years old suddenly spoke up. Of course. She just didn't look that old. But she was a genuine master from the Emperor realm. It was unknown what kind of mysterious power she used, but her body was strangely suspended in mid-air. As she spoke, she slowly floated in front of Dao Ming. Her expression was as gentle as water. She stretched out a jade hand, patted Dao Ming's head across the air, and said, "Don't be afraid. Just tell me what you've seen and heard." As soon as these words were spoken, Dao Ming's trembling body and frightened emotions seemed to have been comforted by something, and he immediately calmed down. He stared blankly at the sky and said, "Master, it's like this." He didn't add fuel to the fire, nor did he fan the flames. He spoke truthfully about everything that had happened before, and it was extremely detailed. Seeing this, Kai Yang was secretly startled. He knew that the young girl from the Emperor realm must have used some kind of soul secret technique. This kind of soul secret technique should be able to guide Dao Ming to tell the truth without damaging his soul. When he heard a strange figure descending from the sky, the old man shouted in a low voice, "What does that person look like? Tell me clearly." "I couldn't see clearly," Dao Ming said. "The person was wearing a wide bamboo hat. She covered her face. However, his attire is extremely strange. He's clearly a man, but he's wearing a gaudy gown." When the old man heard this, his expression changed and he asked in surprise, "What about the token? What does it look like?" Dao Ming described the situation truthfully. The old man was silent for a long time. The middle-aged man looked at the old man with a strange expression and asked, "Vice Temple Master Chiu, do you know who this person is?" The others also looked at the old man curiously, waiting for him to give an answer. The old man had no intention of answering. Instead, he looked at Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang. It was only at this moment that someone looked at Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang for the first time. The two didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly cupped their fists and bowed. The old man nodded lightly and asked, "Did you bring that token?" Qin Chaoyang said, "Master, it was this Qin who brought the token." "Good." The old man said, and then said lightly, "Come with me, this is not the place to talk." After speaking, the old man rolled up his sleeves. In the next moment, Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang felt a gentle force wrap around them, and then they flew forward involuntarily, following the old man closely. The others from the Emperor realm looked at each other and followed the old man closely. After everyone left for a while, Dao Ming seemed to come back to his senses. His body shook, and a look of horror appeared in his eyes. His face turned pale all of a sudden. "Deacon Dao." The other 2 Dao Source Realm Masters hurried forward and paid attention to him nervously. "I'm fine." Dao Ming waved his hand with lingering fear and said, "Fortunately, Master Chen Qian showed mercy, otherwise I would have become an idiot." But when he remembered that the crucial token was destroyed in his hands, Dao Ming felt uneasy, fearing that the sect's higher-ups would blame him for the mistake he made. Azure Sun Temple Main Peak, Myriad Saints Peak. In front of the palace, Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang stood there, looking at each other. There was no guard at the entrance of this palace. After the old man brought the two here, he left them here without asking. As for the others, they all went into the palace. There were many barriers in the palace, and the door was closed. With the strength of Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang, they couldn't see anything at all. Although neither of them was restrained, they didn't dare to act rashly at all, so they could only stand there obediently. Brother Yang, do you think? Qin Chaoyang said with some apprehension. They won't. Yang Kai didn't wait for him to finish, and knew what he was worried about. He smiled lightly and said, if they really wanted to harm us, they would have done it long ago. How would we have a chance to resist? They brought us here and left us outside the door. It seems that they have to discuss it themselves before they make a decision. From what I heard from those people just now, it seems that many people don't know who the owner of that token is. This Qin still can't figure out who he is. Qin Chaoyang said with annoyance. It's normal not to know. Yang Kai smiled slightly, but an ordinary third-order Emperor Realm Master may not have the ability to make Azure Sun Temple so afraid. That person, Brother Yang, you mean? Qin Chaoyang heard him say this and suddenly thought of a possibility, whispering, one of the 10 Master? That's most likely the case. Yang Kai nodded. Sigh. Qin Chaoyang gasped. He couldn't believe that he had come into contact with such a legendary figure. Inside the palace, a man in a purple robe sat at the head of the table. His expression was dignified, and his aura was as deep as the sea. This man was the Temple Master of Azure Sun Temple, a third-order Emperor Realm Master, Wenzi Shan. The old man and the others from the Emperor Realm that Yang Kai had met before also came to the hall. They all held their breath and listened attentively to the old man's report to Wenzi Shan. The token, the man in the flowery robe. Wenzi Shan smiled when he heard this. His smile wasn't very good-looking, but it seemed to have a strange charm. When his smile bloomed, the entire palace seemed to light up for a moment. Temple Master, did you think of something? The old man asked. Old Chiu. Wenzi Shan didn't act like a Temple Master at all. He addressed Vice Temple Master Chiu Ran very casually in front of everyone. This made the old man's veins bulge on his forehead, and the others couldn't help but laugh. Even Jiao Xueting, whose temperament was as cold as ice, had a slight smile at the corner of her mouth. Since you thought of it yourself, why ask me? Wenzi Shan said as he reached out and picked up a bunch of spirit fruits next to him. He raised it above his head and bit off one fruit, then another. His mouth was full of saliva. Temple Master. Chiu Ran couldn't help but shout. Okay, Wenzi Shan mumbled. He put down the unfinished spirit fruit in his hand, clapped his hands, and stood up, saying, in this world, who would carve a token that symbolizes their identity into a beggar on one side and a jade maiden on the other? What kind of person would wear such tasteless clothes and parade through the streets? There is only one answer. In the main hall, everyone held their breaths and focused their attention on Wenzi Shan. At this moment, Wenzi Shan's temperament suddenly changed. His gaze was as sharp as a sword, as if it could pierce through the void. He said in a deep voice, wandering the mortal world, playing in the world, the great emperors of the mortal world. Jiao Xueting suddenly cried out. Oh! Little Xueting is very smart, you guessed it right away. Wenzi Shan glanced in Jiao Xueting's direction, and the dignified face from before suddenly disappeared. He showed a bright smile and said softly, what reward do you want? Uncle can satisfy you. The corner of Jiao Xueting's mouth twitched slightly. Temple Master, please conduct yourself with dignity. I am no longer the little girl from back then. I have long passed the age of needing rewards. I am already more than 200 years old. 200 years old. That's still very young. Wenzi Shan smiled and said with some disappointment, I still prefer the way you were when you were young. Now that you have grown up, you are so cold. Jiao Xueting snorted coldly and turned her head to the side, showing her I can't be bothered with you expression. Temple Master, let's get down to business. The veins on Chiu Ran's forehead throbbed even more violently. He looked like he couldn't bear it anymore, and his robes fluttered even though there was no wind. All right, all right. When Zishan heard this, turned his face, and said as if nothing had happened, the great emperors of the secular world is the most mysterious person among the 10 great emperors. That old thing has always been elusive and elusive. Old thing, everyone in the emperor realm was shocked, and their faces twitched. What kind of people were the 10 great emperors of the secular world? Yet, in the mouth of their own temple master, they had become an old thing. Temple master, is it okay to call him that? What if that master finds out? One of the middle-aged men interrupted in horror. When Zishan smiled, don't be fooled by that old thing. He is actually a very good person. He won't get angry over such a small matter, he casually explained, then continued, and very few people have seen his secular world token. Even in the emperor realm, very few people know what the secular world token looks like, but I happen to know. On the front, there is a picture of a beautiful woman in water, and on the back, there is a picture of a beggar begging. Also, the material of the token can be found everywhere. It is definitely not something precious. Chapter 21-25. Judging from the information you brought back, the 2 Dao Source Realm brats brought the bustling world token without a doubt. Anyone can imitate the bustling world token, but the power attached to it is not something that anyone can imitate. When Zishan smiled and said, but then again, who would want to imitate that kind of token? How could these two have the bustling world token of the great emperors of the bustling world? Qiu Ran frowned. When Zishan shrugged and said, the master's style of doing things. Haha, no one can guess it. It's not surprising that those two have the bustling world token. Maybe one day, there will be many beggars and prostitutes coming to my Azure Sun Temple with the bustling world token. Everyone had a look of indifference on their faces. You don't believe me, when Zishan said, back then, when this king founded Azure Sun Temple, a group of prostitutes came to this king with a bustling world token to ask for money. Well, at that time, none of you were here. Only little Xueting was by my side, so naturally, I didn't know. There's such a thing. Everyone was shocked. Qiu Ran looked speechless and murmured, the bustling world token actually fell into the hands of that kind of woman. This master is really, how treacherous. So unpredictable. The great emperors of the bustling world live up to their reputation. At this time, the girl Chen Qian, who had been quietly floating in the air after using the soul secret technique on Deacon Dao, suddenly said lightly, speaking of which, why does this subordinate feel that the temple master's style of doing things is somewhat similar to that of the great emperors? As soon as she said this, everyone fell into deep thought. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that it made sense. Lord Temple Master is also acting strangely all the time. He's not serious at all. He also wears such tasteless clothes. He has no self-respect. This king is right here. You are talking about this king in front of me. Do you think I'm deaf? When Zishan said with a straight face. Qiu Ran glanced at him and cupped his fists. Master, this subordinate heard that when Temple Master was young, he was adopted by the great emperors of the bustling world for a period of time. I don't know if this is true or not. Absolutely not. This subordinate has also heard that the great emperors of the secular world have imparted knowledge to the master. Wind from an empty cave. Ah! Many people were shocked when they heard this. There's such a thing. Master of the temple has such a relationship with the great emperors of the secular world. I see. I understand. When Zishan looked at the group of people below and said helplessly, what do you understand? Are you trying to say that my character was influenced by that old thing? Nonsense. I am not related to that old thing at all, so why would I be affected by him? Then why does the red dust token appear in my Azure Sun Temple so frequently? Qiu Ran asked. Counting this time, the red dust token had appeared in Azure Sun Temple twice. However, he had never heard of any other faction receiving a Hongchen writ. Well, this king is very curious about what those two want to do in my Azure Sun Temple with the red dust token. Let them in. When Zishan suddenly said seriously. Qiu Ran sighed deeply, feeling more and more that his master of the temple was somewhat similar to the great emperors of the secular world. However, he did not hesitate. With a wave of his hand, He opened the door of the palace and sent a message to the outside. Outside the palace, Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang looked at each other and walked inside side by side with solemn expressions. After the two walked into the main hall, the palace door closed again. There was a group of people from the Emperor realm in the room. Even if these people did not deliberately release their power, the omnipresent pressure was still not something the two First Order Dao Source realm could withstand. Yang Kai was better off. Although he felt a little difficult to walk, at least he did not make a fool of himself. Qin Chaoyang, on the other hand, was trembling with fear. Along the way, he left clear water marks on the ground and his clothes were soaked with sweat. When they got closer, the two cupped their fists and bowed to the surroundings. The rest of the people just looked at them quietly and did not speak. Wen Zishan waved his hand and an invisible force radiated out, making Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang feel a lot more relaxed. "Thank you, Temple Master Wen." Yang Kai cupped his fists and thanked the person on the high platform. Although no one introduced him, since he could sit in the main seat here and wear a symbolic purple robe, there was no doubt that he was the Temple Master of the Azure Sun Temple. After this Temple Master's verification, the tokens you two brought are correct. Wen Zishan's expression was serious as he looked down and said, "This king asks you, why did you bring this token to my Azure Sun Temple?" Yang Kai glanced at Qin Chaoyang beside him, but found that he was cowering, as if he did not dare to speak. In desperation, he could only say, reporting to Temple Master Wen, "The two of us are from Maplewood City. That token was given to Brother Qin by a mysterious master 12 years ago, and instructed him to come to Azure Sun Temple 12 years later to ask Temple Master Wen for a spot to enter the Four Seasons realm." Four Seasons realm? Wen Zishan was a little surprised, and the others also had strange expressions. They thought that the two of them came to Azure Sun Temple with the Hongchen token to make some special requests, but who would have thought that they only wanted a spot to enter the Four Seasons realm? Wen Zishan's divine sense swept over Qin Chaoyang and said lightly, "This old man doesn't look like a talented person, then why did the old master let him enter the Four Seasons realm?" Although the Four Seasons realm is not a great secret territory, because of the limited number of people who can enter, only the elites of the major sects and clans can enter to explore opportunities. "Is there any reason why you must go in?" Qin Chaoyang took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, reporting to Master, "It is for a grandchild of this little old man. She suffers from a chronic illness and is congenitally deficient, which can only be cured by a kind of spirit fruit in the Four Seasons realm. Back then, that lord saw this, so he gave this Qin a token and instructed me to come to Azure Sun Temple 12 years later. So that's how it is." Wen Zishan nodded and did not intend to ask in detail, but said, "Since the master said so, then this temple master can't refuse, it's just a matter of a spot." Hearing this, Qin Chaoyang could not help but show a look of joy. He thought that this trip would be difficult. Not to mention who the owner of the token was, whether or not Azure Sun Temple would give him face, and even if they did, whether or not they would give him a spot. Along the way, Qin Chaoyang was worried. But things went unexpectedly smoothly, and the spot seemed to be at his fingertips. He was pleasantly surprised. But when Zishan changed the topic, "This matter has always been handled by an elder of my temple." Speaking of this, he turned his head and looked to the side, little Xueting. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiao Xueting glared at him fiercely. "Ahem. Elder Jiao." Wen Zishan quickly corrected himself. "Subordinate is here." Jiao Xueting stepped forward and replied solemnly. "You heard what I said just now, how about you arrange this matter?" Wen Zishan said. Jiao Xueting heard this and could not help but show a difficult expression. "What's so difficult about it?" Wen Zishan observed her expression and asked curiously. Qin Chaoyang could not help but feel nervous. Jiao Xueting glanced at Qin Chaoyang and said, "The Four Seasons realm will open in a month, and the spots have already been determined and the disciples have been informed. If one of the spots is taken away now, there will definitely be people who will not be willing." "That's true." Wen Zishan showed a thoughtful expression and muttered to himself, "Entering the Four Seasons realm is something they have been looking forward to for a long time. It is indeed unfair to suddenly revoke one of their qualifications. But after all, this is the master's intention. Well, This is difficult for this king. Jiao Shueting said, actually, this subordinate has a suggestion. Oh, let's hear it. Wen Zishan's eyes lit up. Jiao Shueting said, I just heard this elder say that he entered the Four Seasons realm to obtain a spirit fruit to cure his grandson's illness. This subordinate would like to ask this elder, what kind of spirit fruit do you want to obtain in the Four Seasons realm? If it's convenient, you can tell me. Maybe my Azure Sun Temple already has such a thing. If that's the case, you don't have to take the risk to enter. To be honest, with your strength. She paused for a moment as if she was thinking of the right words, but in the end, she said, you may not be able to come out alive. Qin Chaoyang listened and felt that this was indeed the case, so he immediately replied, Elder Jiao, this old man only wants a tribulation fruit. Tribulation fruit. Qiu Ran could not help but frown. Jiao Shueting also showed a difficult expression. Wen Zishan turned his gaze to the girl named Chen Qian and asked, Elder Chen, you have been in charge of my temple's storehouse. Is there a tribulation fruit in the treasury? Chen Qian said, this subordinate needs to check. How long? A quarter of an hour. Wen Zishan nodded and closed his eyes, no longer speaking. Chen Qian took out a communication artifact and sent her divine sense into it, apparently to convey some orders to the disciples below. For a moment, the main hall was silent. Only Qin Chaoyang waited anxiously, his heart thumping wildly, worrying about his gains and losses to the extreme. Yang Kai was originally standing in place with nothing to do, but suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something and turned his head to look to the side. Over there, Jiao Shueting was looking at him. When she saw him looking over, she did not have any intention of avoiding his gaze. Instead, she looked at him more attentively. This made Yang Kai's heart skip a beat. He secretly felt that something was wrong. Most of the people present were from the Emperor realm, so this scene quickly attracted the attention of others. Everyone could not help but curiously look at Yang Kai, wondering what he had that Jiao Shueting was so interested in. Wen Zishan quietly squinted his eyes, watching all of this with great interest. Elder Jiao, what can I do for you? Yang Kai felt that it was not a good thing to be stared at all the time, especially when the other party was from the Emperor realm. It made him feel uneasy, so he simply spoke up. Where have I seen you before? Jiao Shueting asked. I keep thinking that you look familiar. Ha 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 ha. Before Yang Kai could answer, Wen Zishan, who was above, laughed loudly. Jiao Shueting frowned and glared at him unhappily. Chapter 21-26. Wen Zishan said, Elder Jiao, these words have always been said by a man to a woman, and in a special atmosphere and environment, and with ulterior motives and intentions. If this little brother had said these words to you, this king could still understand, but if you took the initiative to say these words, there seems to be something wrong. Shut up. Jiao Shueting shouted. Yang Kai was shocked when he heard this. Qin Chaoyang was also dumbfounded and looked at Jiao Shueting with a strange expression. Although Jiao Shueting was a first-order Emperor Realm Master, she was just an elder in Azure Sun Temple, while Wen Zishan was the Temple Master. As an elder, she dared to ask the Temple Master to shut up. Wasn't this disgraceful and heinous? What shocked Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang even more was that Wen Zishan really did shut up. Looking around, the others didn't seem to be surprised by this scene and didn't blame Jiao Shueting at all. Instead, a few people cast disdainful looks at Wen Zishan. Yang Kai's mind was in a mess. The first thought that popped up in his mind was that the Wen Zishan sitting on top was an imposter. That was why Jiao Shueting didn't give him any face, and even the others could stare at him. But thinking about it carefully, it wasn't very likely. When Wen Zishan waved his hand just now, he clearly felt the fluctuations of power in his body. This guy was definitely a third-order Emperor Realm Master. In the entire Azure Sun Temple, he was the only third-order Emperor Realm Master. If he wasn't Wen Zishan, who else could he be? Yang Kai was confused. He felt that there was something wrong with the higher-ups of Azure Sun Temple. You haven't answered my question yet. Have I seen you somewhere before? Jiao Shueting turned to look at Yang Kai again. She asked relentlessly. Yang Kai pondered for a moment. I am from Maplewood City. Elder Gao went to Maplewood City last time to help Master Xiao Yuyang open the 5-colored treasure pagoda. At that time, I was also present and even entered the 5-colored treasure pagoda. Perhaps this is why Elder Gao finds me familiar. I see. Gao Shueting muttered. She felt that what he said made sense, so she nodded and said, maybe. After saying that, he then ignored him. Yang Kai let out a sigh of relief. If Gao Shueting were to recognize him as the demon cultivator she had fought with before in this situation, Yang Kai reckoned that his end would be very miserable. Everyone waited quietly in the hall for a moment, and Chen Qian's communication compass suddenly fluctuated with divine thought. After checking for a while, she raised her head and shook her head at Wen Zishan, Temple Master. There is no such thing as a tribulation fruit in our treasury. How disappointing. Wen Zishan murmured. Qin Chaoyang also showed a disappointed expression. After all, it would be best if they could get a ready-made tribulation fruit, so Yang Kai wouldn't have to take the risk of entering the Four Seasons realm. But now, Azure Sun Temple didn't have such a thing, so they didn't know what the group of Emperor Realm Masters would do next. Since there is no such thing, Wen Zishan said, then you can go in and look for it yourself. As for whether you can find it or not, it will depend on your own luck. He said this to Qin Chaoyang. Qin Chaoyang was overjoyed when he heard this. Gao Shueting frowned slightly. She seemed to want to say something, but since Wen Zishan had already spoken, she did not want to interrupt. Many thanks, Temple Master Wen. Qin Chaoyang bowed to the ground. However, this Qin has another request. Wen Zishan smiled slightly. Let's hear it. If it is not too much. Qin Chaoyang said, this Qin requests that Temple Master give me the quota to enter the Four Seasons realm. Give it to Brother Yang. As he spoke, he pointed at Yang Kai with an embarrassed look on his face. I'm sure all of you can see that this Qin is already very old, and although his cultivation is only at the First Order Dao Source realm, I am well aware of my own strength. Just now, Elder Gao said that if I enter with my current strength, I may not be able to come out alive, so my death is a small matter. However, if I can't get the tribulation fruit, you mean to say that if he goes in, he can come out alive? Wen Zishan asked with interest. Qin Chaoyang said, Brother Yang is much more powerful than this Qin. At least you have some self-awareness. Wen Zishan smiled gently, since you have made such a request, then this king will grant it. Anyway, the master only said that he would give you a quota. As for who the quota will be used on, you can decide for yourself. Thank you, Temple Master Wen. Qin Chaoyang was overjoyed and thanked him. Wen Zishan turned his head to look at Yang Kai and said, this king doesn't know what relationship you have with this old man, but this king has to remind you that the Four Seasons realm is not safe. Although you are considered an elite with the richness of the source qi in your body, which one of those who enter that place isn't an elite? Be careful that you don't fall in there. Yang Kai grinned. I was just about to meet the elite disciples of the great sect. Young man, you are so arrogant. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The First Order Dao Source realm is only at the bottom of the Four Seasons realm. The masters of the Emperor realm in the hall began to talk. Wen Zishan smiled and said, it's good to have such an imposing manner. Ian, I hope you can maintain it when you enter. Alright, you two can leave now. When the day of departure arrives, someone will come to greet you. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and before Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang could react, they were already outside the hall. They stood outside and looked at each other. After a moment of silence, a stream of light shot over from a distance. When it came close, they saw that it was Deacon Dao Ming whom they had met before. However, at this moment, Dao Ming was no longer as aggressive as before. He was sweating profusely and rushed forward in a panic. He cupped his hands and said, please follow me. Saying so, he led the way, and Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang followed closely behind. Inside the hall, after Wen Zishan sent off Yang Kai and Qin Chaoyang, he turned his head and looked to the side, saying, Little Shueting, do you still have something to say? Gao Shueting frowned and said, Temple Master, if you do this, you will make it very difficult for me. Wen Zishan smiled and said, isn't it just a quota? Just squeeze one out. Gao Shueting snorted coldly and said, okay, I will pass the order later and say that the temple master will draw a quota. This matter has nothing to do with me. Okay. Wen Zishan nodded and said, if anyone disagrees, tell them to come to this king. He was so straightforward that Jiao Shueting was taken aback. Chen Qian said, actually, this subordinate thinks that we don't have to give them a quota. At worst, we can ask the disciples to help us look for the tribulation fruit when we enter. If it really doesn't work, let Sister Gao stay at the entrance of the secret territory and wait until the secret territory closes to find those who come out to buy it. Maybe we can get something. You should know that our Azure Sun Temple is not the only one who has entered the secret territory. Maybe someone has obtained that kind of spirit fruit. Wen Zishan said, Little Qian is right, but this is the master's request. This king really can't refuse. This matter ends here. Give them a quota. At this point, he smiled evilly. As for whether they can keep it or not, it will depend on their ability. If they can't even keep a quota, then it's fine if they don't go. They will just die anyway. At that time, this king won't be considered to have gone against the master's wishes. Hearing this, Jiao Shueting's eyes lit up and she nodded. This subordinate knows what to do. After Wen Zishan nodded slightly, his figure flickered and he disappeared. The others also gradually dispersed. In the end, only Chen Qian and Jiao Shueting were left. Sister Jiao, who do you want to make a move? Chen Qian asked. Jiao Shueting thought for a while and said, what do you think of Shuiyi? Shuiyi. Chen Qian didn't seem to have much of an impression of this person. Hearing this, she thought for a while and said, he is a second-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. Can that young guy deal with him? Among the 20 people, Shuiyi's strength is considered to be below average. If that young guy can't even deal with Shuiyi, what's the point of going in? The Four Seasons realm is not a place to play, and the tribulation fruit is not easy to find. I'm doing this for his own good. Sister Gao's words make sense. Chen Qian nodded, but she still felt that something was wrong. Dao Ming brought Yang Kai and Qin Zhao Yang to a solitary mountain peak that was 1,000 kilometers away from the main hall. He then left alone after settling Yang Kai and Qin Zhao Yang in a palace on the mountain peak. Yang Kai checked a little and found that there was no one on this lonely peak. In other words, only he and Qin Chaoyang were here. It was quite leisurely. After the two chatted for a while, they each found a room. Along the way, Qin Chaoyang had also consumed a lot of energy. Naturally, he wanted to quickly recover his strength and return to Maplewood City. Yang Kai, on the other hand, needed to take this opportunity to refine the flight-type artifact given to him by Auntie Feng and the Myriad's Sword Emperor artifact. The grade of the Myriad's sword was too high, so there was no need to think about how thoroughly he could refine it. He could only slightly strengthen his connection with it. Fortunately, Yang Kai had the refining experience left behind by the Qin family's ancestors, so he could avoid some detours. There wasn't much time left. After all, according to Jiao Shueting's previous statement, the Four Seasons realm would open in a month, and considering the travel time, Yang Kai estimated that at most half a month later, someone would call him to set off. So, he was racing against time. 5 days later, Qin Chaoyang recovered. After telling Yang Kai some things, he said goodbye and set off. Given the current situation, it was useless for him to continue staying. Since it had been decided that Yang Kai would enter the Four Seasons realm, it would be a waste of time for him to continue staying here, so he might as well return home. After Yang Kai sent him away, he was the only one left in the palace. On this day, he was in seclusion in his room when he suddenly felt 2 tyrannical auras coming from afar. They were rapidly approaching him. The newcomers had no intention of hiding themselves. One of them exuded the aura of the third-order Dao Source realm, while the other was a second-order Dao Source realm cultivator. Setting off so soon? Yang Kai frowned and muttered to himself. He thought that they were sent by Azure Sun Temple to call him to gather. Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated and quickly got up, walked out of the room, and waited outside the hall. Chapter 21-27. After a short while, 2 rays of light flashed and landed not far in front of Yang Kai, revealing 2 figures. The person on the left was dressed in snow-white robes, with starry eyes and sword-like eyebrows. He had an extraordinary temperament, exuding a sharp aura from head to toe, like an unsheathed sword. This person had the cultivation of the third-order Dao Source realm, causing Yang Kai to involuntarily take a few more glances at him. The aura of the other party gave him a faint pressure, as if the sharp aura could cut through his skin, causing him to be slightly shocked. As expected of an elite disciple of a great sect. Just the aura he exudes, intentionally or unintentionally, is not something an ordinary third-order Dao Source realm cultivator can achieve. The man on the right had a wide mouth and a chipped nose. He was burly and wore a short-sleeved shirt and shorts. Black hair covered his thick calves and arms. At first glance, this person looked like an upright gorilla, giving off a strong visual impact. This person had a second-order Dao Source realm cultivation. After the two landed, they both cast their gazes at Yang Kai. Yang Kai from Maplewood City greets the two of you. Yang Kai cupped his fists and said, "How should I address the two of you?" The white-clothed man's expression was cold and indifferent, as if he hadn't heard Kai Yang's words. Instead, it was the gorilla-like burly man who suddenly shouted, "Hey, you are that Kai Yang?" Yang Kai was stunned, but still nodded solemnly and said, "If there is no one else in the temple with this name, then it is me." "Very good." Seeing this, the burly man grinned. He looked at Yang Kai up and down a few times, as if he was examining a prey. He said in a booming voice, "Boy, you stole this uncle's spot to enter the sealed world. I think you're tired of living." Hearing this, Yang Kai immediately knew that these two were not companions who came to welcome him to the sealed world. They were probably here to cause trouble. He frowned and said, "Friend, you misunderstand. It's a bit complicated for me to explain it unilaterally. Why don't you ask Elder Gao? I think she will give you a satisfactory answer." "Mph, there's no need to ask." The burly man snorted coldly. "Elder Gao has already told me that he wants to cancel my spot and transfer it to you. I refuse to accept this. Sir System's spot was obtained through the sect's martial arts exhibition, where he fought hard and fought for it. What right do you have to snatch it away?" "Sect martial arts exhibition?" Yang Kai frowned. At this time, the man in white who had not spoken until now suddenly said, 3 months ago, there was an internal competition among the disciples of my temple. Only the top 20 disciples in the competition were qualified to enter the Four Seasons realm. Shui Yi was ranked 15th. So it's Brother Shui. Yang Kai finally knew the burly man's name. He curiously looked at the white-clothed man and asked, "How should I address you?" "This is Brother Xiao Bai Yi." Shui Yi coldly snorted. "I'm curious. Brother Xiao's ranking in the sect's martial arts exhibition was?" Yang Kai asked tentatively. Brother Xiao was ranked 2nd. Shui Yi spoke with a complacent expression. After he finished speaking, he was stunned for a moment, and then he suddenly shouted sternly, "Bastard kid, don't even think about changing the topic. I asked Senior Brother Xiao to accompany me here today to tell you that if you want to snatch the quota from me, then you have to ask me first. Don't think that you can do whatever you want with Elder Gao's support. Be careful or I'll crush your head." As he spoke, he opened his big fan-like hand. He fiercely clenched it and threatened Yang Kai fiercely. Yang Kai smiled and said, "Then what will it take for Brother Shui to agree to give up this spot?" "It's very simple." Xiao Bai Yi said lightly, "Our spots are all obtained through the sect's martial arts exhibition. In other words, the strong will get it. If you can kill Junior Brother Shui, then your spot will naturally be deserved. I don't think the others will say anything." "Yes." Shui Yi nodded fiercely, "Kill me, or be killed by me. The person who lives will have the spot." "That's not good." Yang Kai showed hesitation. These two guys spoke so crudely that it made him feel uneasy. If he was killed by Shui Yi, nothing would happen, but if he killed Shui Yi, he was afraid that he would make a big mess. "There's nothing wrong with it." Xiao Bai Yi's expression was still indifferent. "Or, are you afraid? Why is Brother Xiao trying to provoke me?" Yang Kai smiled bitterly. "Heh, if you are really afraid, it's not too late to leave Azure Sun Mountain Range now. With your weak first-order Dao Source realm cultivation, this sir is really worried that he will accidentally kill you." Shui Yi laughed arrogantly. "Ari, Yang Kai sighed and said, I understand why you two are here. He didn't expect that just asking for a spot to enter the Four Seasons realm would cause such trouble. If possible, he naturally didn't want to fight with the cultivator of Azure Sun Temple. But seeing Shui Yi so aggressive, he couldn't solve this matter even if he tolerated it. After all, he had promised Qin Chaoyang and used the Jade Beggar token left by that master, so he had to go to the Four Seasons realm. Since you two are so kind, then this Yang will accept. Brother Xiao, please be a witness to the outcome of this matter. Don't worry. Xiao Baiyi was a little surprised to see Yang Kai agree. He thought that if he and Shui Yi came in person and threatened the other party, wouldn't they be scared witless and run away? But the result of this matter was not like that. He said lightly, I agreed with junior brother Shui to come here this time to witness this matter. No matter how you two win or lose, or if you are in danger, I will not intervene. Brother Xiao seems to be a trustworthy person. Yang Kai grinned, then I'll have to trouble you. You'd better take care of yourself. Don't die too easily. Otherwise, if word gets out, it will not be good for the temple's reputation. Xiao Baiyi narrowed his eyes slightly. In the void, two beautiful figures were hiding, quietly watching the situation below. Chen Qian said, this young guy, he's got guts. Facing Shui Yi, who is one realm higher than him, he didn't even flinch. Guts have nothing to do with strength. Jiao Shueting said lightly. While speaking, she suddenly looked up at the void, curled her lips, and snorted, you're not doing your job. Coming to watch the show for such a trivial matter, what a scandal. Chen Qian heard this and also looked in that direction, pursing her lips and smiling. Temple Master, I'm afraid you're bored. At this moment, when Zishan's voice sounded in the ears of the two women, are the two beauties interested in drinking with this Temple Master? This Temple Master has specially prepared. Not interested. We don't want to go. The two women didn't wait for him to finish his words and simply refused, leaving no room for discussion. When Zishan was stunned for a moment, looking heartbroken, and sighed deeply, drinking without a companion, life is not going to go your way. Be serious, or I'll go over and flip your table. Jiao Shueting looked over there coldly. When Zishan slapped his face and said in despair, how did I raise you to have such a cold personality? You're not like me at all. Jiao Shueting snorted, are you my father or something? Why should I be like you? When Zishan was speechless. The corner of Jiao Shueting's mouth raised, revealing a subtle smile. Brother Xiao, he agreed to fight me, right? Shui Yi turned his head and asked. He agreed. Xiao Baiyi nodded. Then can I make my move? Shui Yi asked again. He didn't wait for Xiao Baiyi to answer at all. As soon as he said this, he rushed directly in front of Yang Kai and threw a punch at Yang Kai. Even if Yang Kai's reaction was fast, he didn't expect this simple-minded gorilla-like man to be so cunning. In a moment of carelessness, the other party's fist had already arrived in front of him. The fist was raging, and a strong destructive force lingered on it, condensing at one point and blooming with a cold light. Startled, Yang Kai could only step back a few steps and retreat. Shui Yi's huge body showed an unnatural agility, like a maggot attached to a bone. He maintained a very close distance with Yang Kai and sneered, boy, if you can survive, you'll have to take care of yourself in the future. As soon as he finished speaking, his fist slammed into Yang Kai's face. Accompanied by an explosive sound, a violent force raged out, and Yang Kai's body flew back uncontrollably, crashing directly into the wall of the palace, creating a big hole in the solid wall. Asterisk Hong Long Long, asterisk a series of noises came from inside the palace, as if Yang Kai had been smashed into several walls. After a while, the noise gradually disappeared. Boring. Shui Yi swung his big fist and snorted coldly, not even looking in the direction of Yang Kai. Brother Xiao, let's go. Xiao Baiyi didn't move, narrowing his eyes as he looked forward, his gaze so sharp that it seemed to be able to penetrate the void. Suddenly, his expression changed and he shouted, it's not over yet, Shui Yi heard this and turned his head sharply. From the hole in the wall, a person slowly walked out. As he walked, he swung his two arms, grimacing in pain as if he was complaining about his pain. You blocked it, in the nick of time. When Zishan squinted and looked down, praising, good reaction. At that moment, When Zishan clearly saw Yang Kai suddenly cross his arms and block in front of him. Shui Yi's earth-shattering blow directly hit his arms and did not hit his head. Otherwise, with his brutal strength, Yang Kai would have fainted even if his head was not blown off. His physique is very strong, this young brat. Gao Shuiting's beautiful eyes also narrowed. Chen Qian said, I remember that Shui Yi cultivated the Vajra Heavenly King body, right? Gao Shuiting nodded. He started cultivating it when he was in the Origin King realm. If I'm not wrong, he should have cultivated it to the 6th stage. In terms of physical strength, he is the best among all the Dao Source Realm disciples, except for that person. He took Shui Yi's blow head-on and didn't seem to be injured. This young brat should have also cultivated a body-tempering secret art, Chen Qian said thoughtfully. Chapter 21-28. Little Shuiting, how about we make a bet? At this moment, when Zishan suddenly transmitted his voiceover. What bet? Gao Shuiting turned her head and looked over. Let's bet on who will win. When Zishan smiled slightly and pointed below. What's the bet? Gao Shuiting asked coldly. Let me think. When Zishan showed a thoughtful look, oh right, little Shuiting, haven't you always wanted to enter the door of life and death? If you win, this king will allow you to enter. Are you serious? Gao Shuiting's beautiful eyes narrowed as she shouted. On the side, Chen Qian, who heard the words door of life and death, also had a change in expression. When has this king ever lied to you? When Zishan showed a harmless smile as he spoke. Gao Shuiting stared at Wen Zishan as if she wanted to see into his heart, but the other party still maintained that warm and dazzling smile. After a while, Gao Shuiting finally moved her gaze away and said, Indeed, although you are always sloppy and don't do proper work, you don't have the temperament and demeanor of a sect master. When Zishan's face darkened as the corners of his mouth twitched slightly, after hearing your evaluation, this king feels useless. Gao Shuiting changed the topic and said, But you really haven't lied to anyone. Is this the only good thing about this king? When Zishan looked dejected. Then what do you want if you win? Gao Shuiting asked coldly. When Zishan chuckled as his bright eyes swept over Gao Shuiting a few times. The latter felt uncomfortable under his gaze and her face was slightly red. She snorted, Quickly put away your dirty thoughts. Be careful or I'll gouge your eyes out. What are you thinking? When Zishan laughed, Well, how about this, if I win, you promise me a small request that is not against your principles and is not too excessive. A small request? What kind of request? Gao Shuiting asked warily. Well, I haven't thought about it yet. I'll tell you when I think about it, okay? When Zishan laughed. Sister Gao, don't be fooled. We don't know what the temple master is trying to do, Chen Qian kindly reminded her, afraid that Gao Shuiting would be rash and fall into Wen Zishan's trap. I know. Gao Shuiting nodded. As he spoke, he turned his head to look down and continued, but he has to win this bet first. Otherwise, there's no point in saying anything. While speaking, she nodded at Wen Zishan, Okay, I agree. It's a deal. Wen Zishan chuckled, Don't go back on your word. You'd better prepare the pass to enter the gate of life and death for me first. Chen Qian sighed with a helpless look. She didn't think that Yang Kai could defeat Shui Yi, who was ranked 15th in the Dao Source realm in the entire Azure Sun Temple. However, she always had a bad feeling in her heart. Although the temple master was not serious in all kinds of ways, he was still very reliable at critical moments. Chen Qian did not think that Wen Zishan would really let Gao Shuiting enter the door of life and death, so he should have a lot of confidence in this bet. Thinking of this, she hurriedly looked down. Below, Shui Yi looked at Yang Kai, who was walking over step by step, with a slight surprise, and grinned, Why can't you just lie there obediently? Why do you have to come out? You're courting death. Friend, you're quite insidious. I've learned my lesson. Yang Kai snorted. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in his ear, Boy, do a good job and beat your opponent down. This king can promise you a request that is not too excessive. Hearing this voice, Yang Kai was stunned. Because this voice was clearly the voice of the Azure Sun Temple Master, Wen Zishan. He had just seen this man a few days ago, so he was naturally familiar with his voice. Moreover, in this Azure Sun Temple headquarters, no one would dare to impersonate Wen Zishan and send him a message. In other words, the one who sent him the message was Wen Zishan himself. What's going on? Yang Kai frowned and released his divine sense. He glanced around but did not find any trace of Wen Zishan. A sect master actually secretly sent a message to an outsider, asking him to work hard and beat the elite disciple of his own sect. If such a funny thing did not happen to Yang Kai himself, he would not believe it. Moreover, Wen Zishan actually said that he could promise him a request that was not too excessive. What did this mean? Even though Yang Kai was shrewd, he could not understand the whole story. And just at the moment when he was absent-minded, a fierce attack had already arrived in front of him. What are you thinking? You dare to be distracted in front of a great enemy. Don't look down on people. Shui Yi's words came along with the attack. It was still the same rough punch. The fist was wrapped in a strong wind vortex, as if it wanted to destroy everything in front of it. Great enemy. Yang Kai suddenly raised his head and stared at Shui Yi with cold eyes, revealing a kind of disdain. In the face of the earth-shattering blow, he did not dodge and met it with a punch of his own. Boom! A loud noise came out and the sky trembled. The ground where the two of them were standing suddenly caved in, forming a huge circular crater. The ground was torn apart, and spider web-like cracks crisscrossed the ground. Asterisk kai 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 kai, asterisk above the fists, the source chi of the two collided, making a harsh sound. The surrounding gravel and dirt were affected and slowly floated into the air as if weightless. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, the space was distorted several times. You've got some skill. Shui Yi's thick eyebrows rose slightly as he stared at Kai Yang, who was so close to him. Just now, he sent Yang Kai flying with a punch, so he thought that his opponent was just SOSO, but now that they really fought, he found that his opponent was very strong. Although he was a minor realm lower than himself, it seemed that he would not be so easy to defeat. Not far away, Xiao Baiyi also showed a look of astonishment, his expression changing slightly. You also have some skills. Yang Kai replied, the corners of his mouth rising as he sneered, mouth. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly swung his other fist. It swung in an arc. It blasted towards Shui Yi's cheek. Shui Yi was not afraid. He just snorted coldly and raised his arm to block the attack. He did not stop at all. His arm flicked leisurely, taking advantage of the gap between Yang Kai's attack. He launched another attack. Yang Kai's reaction was naturally not slow. He retracted his fist into a palm and placed it in front of his neck. When Shui Yi's attack arrived, he clenched his fist fiercely, as if he wanted to crush his opponent's fist. Naive. Shui Yi sneered. His body leaned back slightly, and his foot shot out like a cannonball, kicking Yang Kai's abdomen. Yang Kai's elbow slammed down. Before his attack arrived, it was dissolved. The two of them fought like a flash of lightning, directly in close combat, quickly probing, attacking, and counterattacking. Their movements were smooth and without any pattern. It was dazzling. It was breathtaking. A trace of solemnity finally appeared in Xiao Baiyi's eyes. Although he was ranked second in the sect's martial arts exhibition, if he were to fight Shui Yi in close combat, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. But that Kai Yang was able to fight evenly with Shui Yi, evenly matched. In other words, in terms of close combat in the territory, his level was the same as Shui Yi's. What made it difficult for Xiao Baiyi to accept was that Yang Kai was only at the level of the first-order Dao Source realm. One minor realm lower than Shui Yi, two minor realms lower than him. Which corner did this guy pop out from? He and Shui Yi were the elites of Azure Sun Temple. Asterisk peng peng peng. Asterisk in front of the palace, two figures crisscrossed, moving back and forth. They did not use any artifacts or secret techniques, only the collision of their flesh and source chi. The rough fighting style bloomed with a wild beauty, dazzling people who watched. Deep pits appeared on the ground one after another, and the void collapsed due to the violent power. The battlefield shifted several times, and the entire lonely peak was a mess. Sister Gao. Chen Qian was stunned. Although she was shocked that she had underestimated Yang Kai's ability, she was more worried about the bet between Jiao Shueting and the unscrupulous temple master. If this guy surnamed Yang really won, who knew what kind of shameful things he would ask Jiao Shueting to do with his bad taste? Damn it, I misjudged him. Jiao Shueting also gritted her teeth and glared fiercely in the direction of Wen Zishan, only to see him leisurely drinking wine and eating spirit fruits with an expression of victory on his face. This made her sullen mood even worse. Do you think you've won? Jiao Shueting said coldly. In that case, don't blame me for using my trump card. Having said that, she stared down again and moved her divine sense slightly. Down below, Shui Yi, who was fighting fiercely with Yang Kai, suddenly showed a look of horror and shouted, "No!" At this moment, he seemed to have been greatly stimulated, and his whole person showed a frightened expression. Yang Kai did not care what happened to him and directly punched him in the face. Shui Yi screamed and his body flew high like a kite with a broken string. Blood flowed out of his nostrils in midair, and he fell heavily to the ground. Huh! Xiao Baiyi looked at this scene in amazement. He really did not understand what had happened to Shui Yi just now. How could he be hit by Yang Kai in a situation where they were evenly matched? It seems like he's more of a hindrance than a help. Wen Zishan smiled at Jiao Shueting gloatingly in the void. Jiao Shueting snorted coldly and said, "Don't talk nonsense, just wait and see." Wen Zishan was rebuffed, but he did not care. After all, he had always been shameless. On the other side, Shui Yi, who had fallen to the ground, slowly got up. He stretched out his hand and wiped the bottom of his nose. He grinned and said, "I don't want to be locked up for half a year. Ancient Black Peak is not a place for people to stay. What nonsense are you talking about? Did you get beaten, silly?" Yang Kai narrowed his eyes and looked at him. "I just want to say, you're finish." Shui Yi's eyes suddenly burst with an extremely dangerous light, and his whole body bloomed with a faint light. "I just wanted to teach you a lesson, but now I might accidentally kill you." As soon as he finished speaking, the light on his body suddenly became brighter, accompanied by a shocking roar. His exposed skin and flesh suddenly became as hard as steel, glowing with a metallic luster. Chapter 21-29. At the same time, Shui Yi's aura was rising steadily. He was only a second-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, but he was exuding a tyrannical aura comparable to a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes and looked at Shui Yi, who had changed greatly, and smiled slightly, body tempering technique. While speaking, he shot out 2 source chi bursts towards Shui Yi. This was just a test. Shui Yi obviously saw it and did not dodge. Asterisk dong dong, asterisk 2 sounds rang out. When the attack landed on Shui Yi, it was as if it had hit steel, making a crisp sound. Not only that, but sparks also sputtered. "It's useless. In front of my Vajra Heavenly King physique, all your attacks are futile." Shui Yi raised his head slightly and said to Yang Kai in a condescending manner, "Whether it's futile or not, you will know soon." Yang Kai did not want to waste time with him. His figure flashed and disappeared from the spot. Shui Yi's eyes narrowed and his brow furrowed. At that moment, he lost track of Yang Kai. The other party's speed was beyond his imagination. But as an elite disciple of Azure Sun Temple, he did not panic. He instinctively stretched out a big fan-like hand and grabbed behind him. Over there, Yang Kai's figure appeared as expected. It was as if he had walked into a trap and slammed into his big hand. A smirk appeared at the corner of Shui Yi's mouth as he stomped his foot on the ground. In an instant, the earth trembled. Accompanied by a muffled roar, an earth dragon suddenly shot out from the ground and shot towards Yang Kai, intending to kill him. Above the earth dragon, the power of principle lingered. Obviously, it was a secret technique that Shui Yi cultivated. The earth dragon was extremely fast. In a breath, it had rushed in front of Yang Kai. At this time, Yang Kai was standing in the air and was about to launch a sneak attack on Shui Yi, so there was no time or space to dodge. The earth dragon opened its mouth and bit Yang Kai, then exerted force. Yang Kai's body was directly broken in 2. Shui Yi didn't feel happy or relaxed after he succeeded. Instead, he looked startled. In that instant, he didn't feel like he had been attacked. As he looked over, sure enough, the body that had been bitten in half had turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared. It was just an afterimage. Not good. Shui Yi shouted in a low voice as he hurriedly looked ahead. He didn't know when Kai Yang had appeared in front of him, lowering his body. His gaze was sharp and firm as he aimed at his lower abdomen. With a slight shake of his fists, he turned into countless afterimages. Bang bang bang, Shui Yi's tall body seemed to have suffered a heavy blow as he kept retreating. Halos of power kept bursting out from his lower abdomen. A violent sound rang out. Vajra. Barrier. Shui Yi suddenly roared. A layer of earthy yellow light suddenly appeared around him, wrapping around him like a cylinder. After using this defensive secret technique, Yang Kai clasped his fists together and smashed downwards. Boom, dust splashed and a huge crater appeared on the ground, but Yang Kai was nowhere to be seen. More than 100 feet away, Yang Kai stood quietly with a thoughtful look on his face. After refining the true dragon's blood, dragon bone, and dragon pearl, my strength and reflexes seem to have increased a lot. Perhaps, it is also the effect of the 10,000 medicinal treasures soup. After all, although I drank it at that time, it was not completely refined and was only stored in my flesh and blood, he secretly thought. In the past, he would never be able to cause harm to an enemy like Shui Yi in such a way, but now, on the opposite side, Shui Yi seemed to be unscathed, but his aura seemed to be a little chaotic. There was even a trace of blood overflowing from the corner of his mouth. How could this be? Xiao Baiyi's heart was in turmoil. In the sect's martial arts exhibition 3 months ago, he had faced Shui Yi head-on, so he naturally knew the power of the Vajra Heavenly King body. Even if he wanted to break through that impregnable defense, it would not be easy. That battle was still fresh in his memory. He had spent a full 2 hours and used all his means to defeat Shui Yi. But now, Yang Kai was able to injure Shui Yi just by relying on brute force. So, did he still have some strength left in the previous battle? When this thought came to his mind, Xiao Baiyi was almost confused. This person was definitely not as simple as he seemed on the surface. He either hid his true cultivation or had an extraordinary background. Xiao Baiyi secretly guessed in his heart. Brother Shui, not bad. You've cultivated a good ability to take a beating. Yang Kai stood not far away and smiled at Shui Yi. Shui Yi had long lost his previous arrogance and carelessness. Since he was injured, he realized that the situation was not right. He had cultivated the Vajra Heavenly King body to the 6th level, and even those in the Emperor realm in the sect praised his physical strength. Now, he was injured by an unknown first-order Dao Source realm. If someone had told him that this would happen before, he would probably have just laughed it off. But the truth was right in front of him. However, Yang Kai said, his eyes sharpening again, you can only take a beating, but you can't win against me. Don't boast so shamelessly. Shui Yi became angry, the corners of his eyes twitching fiercely, and his expression suddenly became ferocious as he shouted, if you really die later, don't blame me. As soon as he finished speaking, he formed a seal with both hands. A mysterious force burst out from his body, and his already burly figure suddenly grew taller. The muscles on his body bulged, and the metallic luster became more dazzling, blooming a dazzling white light. He stomped his feet and a light flashed on his fists. He summoned a knuckle-like artifact, exuding an extremely dangerous aura, and rushed towards Yang Kai. At this moment, the white light on his body spread out layer by layer, lingering around the peak, turning the whole world into a white world. Not good, he's really going all out. Wen Zishan narrowed his eyes and looked down, secretly preparing to intervene if the situation went wrong. After all, Shui Yi was an elite disciple of the sect, and Yang Kai was a guest. No matter who died in this battle, it was not something he wanted to see. It's a bit surprising that this kid surnamed Yang could force Shui Yi to this extent. Chen Qian was slightly surprised, he's also a talent. I wonder if Temple Master has any plans to accept him into the sect. It's not impossible to accept him into the sect. It's just that. Just what? It's just that I have a feeling that I've seen this kid surnamed Yang somewhere before, and, he's very dangerous. Chen Qian looked at Jiao Shui Ting in amazement, not understanding what she was talking about. At this moment, in the white world, a five-colored light suddenly bloomed. The five-colored light was dazzling. It was like a sharp blade that cut a hole in the white world. The power of the five elements. Gao Shueting raised her eyebrows, a look of surprise on her face. She felt the power of the five elements from the five-colored light, which countered and reinforced each other, circulating endlessly. The whole world seemed to be left with only the battle between the five-colored light and the white world. The hole that was cut expanded for a while, and from it came Shui Yi's unwilling roar and Yang Kai's continuous groan. The battle between the two had obviously entered a white-hot stage. Xiao Bai Yi, who was watching the battle from below. He had to use his secret technique to resist the impact of the terrifying power. He grew to this extent in 3 months. Xiao Bai Yi was shocked. It seems that Shui Yi is working very hard. He was sure that the current Shui Yi was much stronger than he was 3 months ago. If he had such strength 3 months ago, it was possible for him to rush into the top 10, but even so, that kid named Yang Kai could still compete with him, leisurely. A low voice sounded, million sword waves. Moon swallowing wolf chasing moon. As soon as these words fell, countless dazzling sword waves suddenly shot out from the sky. They were all five-colored and full of the power of the five elements, sharp and unstoppable. At the same time, an extraordinary energy fluctuation spread out leisurely. Asterisk Kai 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 Kai. Asterisk the white world was suddenly destroyed, leaving behind only a ball of five-colored light, standing quietly in mid-air. Shui Yi's body was full of wounds. He fell from the sky with a look of unwillingness and helplessness. His face was extremely pale, and his originally metallic body had lost its previous luster. The brass knuckles artifact on his hands were also dim. Seeing that Shui Yi was about to fall heavily to the ground, Xiao Bai Yi hurriedly swayed and came under him to catch him. He checked Shui Yi's injuries and found that he was fine. He had just consumed too much energy, so he was relieved. Raising his head again, Xiao Bai Yi stared coldly at Yang Kai in the air, his eyes fixed on the broad long sword in his hand as he coldly snorted, "An emperor artifact?" Yang Kai grinned. "Relying on the suppression of an emperor artifact, what kind of skill is that?" Xiao Bai Yi said with a look of contempt. Yang Kai asked curiously, "He can use an artifact, but I can't. If you have the ability, then fight junior brother Shui on equal footing." Xiao Bai Yi's disdain deepened. In his opinion, the reason why Yang Kai could suddenly win was entirely because of the power of an emperor artifact. If he really relied on his own ability, he might not be able to defeat Shui Yi. "If you have the ability, then ask him to find an emperor artifact to fight me," Yang Kai said with a proud look on his face. "Very good." Xiao Bai Yi seemed to be quite angry as he stared coldly at Yang Kai and said, "You win this battle. I hope you can come back from the Four Seasons realm alive." After saying so, he no longer bothered to pay attention to Yang Kai, carried Shui Yi on his back, and flew off. After he left, Yang Kai looked up at the void and said, "Is this enough?" In the void, a figure flashed and Wen Zishan appeared, staring curiously at the myriad sword in Yang Kai's hand and asked, "Boy, where did you get that emperor artifact? It's not something you can find on the streets." "None of your business." Wen Zishan choked on his words and couldn't help rolling his eyes, but soon, his expression changed and he said solemnly, "You've put a lot of thought into this. You actually saw that the longer Shui Yi was in this state, the more dangerous it would be. Perhaps he would lose his mind and directly use an emperor artifact to end the battle quickly. Unfortunately, you were misunderstood. I just enjoyed the pleasure of being suppressed by an emperor artifact," Yang Kai coldly snorted. "Heh, Xiao Bai Yi is not as easy to deal with as Shui Yi. The words he said before he left are very concerning. Perhaps he will attack you in the Four Seasons realm. Do you want this king to explain to him?" Chapter 2130. Don't worry about it. Yang Kai curled his lips. Wen Zishan smiled and did not get angry. After thinking for a while, he said, "Then, do you want this king to help you refine this emperor artifact? I see that your compatibility with this emperor artifact is very low. You can't even unleash its power. You don't have much time left. If this king helps, I guarantee that you will be able to unleash 1/10 of its power after entering the Four Seasons realm. You will be invincible in the sealed world. What do you think? He had an earnest expression on his face, as if he was going to give Yang Kai a huge benefit. Yang Kai shook his head and looked at him mockingly. Temple Master Wen, are you so eager for me to make a request? Wen Zishan heard this and the corner of his mouth twitched. He muttered under his breath, damn it, you saw through me. Yang Kai laughed, this junior will consider your request carefully. When the time comes, I will come to Temple Master Wen to fulfill it. He understood that Wen Zishan was a third-order Emperor Realm Master and the Temple Master of Azure Sun Temple. Although this person gave him a somewhat unreliable feeling, such a master always kept his promises. He promised that he could make a request that was not too excessive after defeating Shui Yi, so he would definitely fulfill it. Yang Kai did not have anything to ask for at the moment, so it was better not to mention it and save it for later use. Who knows, it might be of great help at a critical moment. This brat is too insidious and cunning, Wen Zishan said hatefully, but soon, he showed an indifferent expression and waved his hand, forget it. You deserve it. Come to Fallen Flower Peak in 7 days. When the time comes, someone will take you along. Yes. Yang Kai nodded, cupped his fists, and bowed, see you off, Temple Master Wen. Wen Zishan smiled slightly and his body gradually faded. After a few breaths, he completely disappeared. After he left, Yang Kai frowned and glanced at the void on the other side. He had a blank look on his face. He had a feeling that there was someone hiding there, but he couldn't find out who it was. However, if the other party was from the Emperor realm, then everything made sense. Since the other party didn't take the initiative to show up, he was probably just here to watch the show. Yang Kai naturally wouldn't ask for trouble. He turned around and walked towards the ruined palace. This kid surnamed Yang seems to have discovered us. Chen Qian stared at Yang Kai's back with some surprise and said softly, it's probably just a suspicion. Jiao Shueting said. His senses are also unusually sharp. This person is very interesting. Sister Jiao, do you think he came from that place? Jiao Shueting turned to look at her. Chen Qian said, if he didn't come from that place, how could he have such strength? He even has an Emperor artifact. He's only in the first-order Dao Source realm. Jiao Shueting shook her head. If it really came from there, there's no way we wouldn't know. However, they were the rising stars of this generation. There are really many capable people. Chen Qian heard this and nodded. Yes. Princess Lan Xun perfectly inherited the bright moon phantom of the great emperors. I heard that she also advanced to the Dao Source realm more than a year ago. This time, she will definitely go to the Four Seasons realm. In Heavenly Martial Holy Land, there seems to be a yin-yang dual body. Although Zhuang Biyu Fan of Orthodoxy Temple doesn't have a special physique, he is talented and intelligent. Since the beginning of his cultivation, he has seen fighting above his realm as a common occurrence. He has made a name for himself at a young age and is now in the third-order Dao Source realm. Although the two chambers of commerce are mainly businessmen, they have also recruited many outstanding talents in recent years. I suddenly feel that the Southern Territory is already their Southern Territory. I'm already old. Jiao Shueting was silent. Obviously, she felt the same way. Yang Kai returned to his room and naturally sped up the refining of the Emperor artifact. Wen Zishan had already made it clear that they would gather at Luoying Peak in 7 days, so there wasn't much time left for him. While comprehending the insights left behind by the Qin family's ancestors, he strengthened the connection between himself and the Myriad Sword. Wen Zishan was right about one thing. Right now, he couldn't even display the slightest power of the Myriad Sword. Being able to severely injure Shui Yi in one move was mostly due to his own strength, and only a small part of it was due to the power of the Emperor artifact. Time passed slowly, and a few days passed by. On this day, Yang Kai was in secluded cultivation. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he opened his eyes. At the same time, an unusual tidal force surged between heaven and earth. This force was so powerful and mysterious that it was unpredictable. Listening carefully, he could vaguely hear some strange sounds. Yang Kai's expression was solemn as he arrived outside the hall in a flash. The sky was dim, and the earth was hazy. A huge shadow covered the sky, as if a behemoth was flying above. Yang Kai looked up and was immediately stunned. In the sky, a huge white bird was flying slowly. The white bird's appearance was ordinary. At first glance, it looked like a pigeon that had been magnified countless times, but the pressure coming from its body was as heavy as a mountain. What is this? A divine spirit. Yang Kai was surprised and doubtful. Looking at the direction the giant pigeon was flying, it seemed to be flying towards the main peak of Azure Sun Mountain Range. Asterisk shio shio shio, asterisk one figure after another appeared from all directions. Clearly, they were all alarmed by this power. On the main peak, Wen Zishan's figure flashed and appeared strangely. He stared at the giant pigeon flying towards him, and a rare solemn expression appeared on his usually frivolous face. After a short while, the giant pigeon flew above Wen Zishan. With a flash of brilliance, the giant pigeon suddenly became the size of an ordinary pigeon, and the astonishing pressure and power fluctuations disappeared in an instant. The white pigeon did not stop and flew straight towards Wen Zishan. Wen Zishan had no intention of stopping or moving, and just stood in place. When it was only about 10 feet away from Wen Zishan, the white pigeon suddenly burst into pieces, turning into spots of fluorescent light that wrapped around Wen Zishan's body. The fluorescent light slowly seeped into Wen Zishan's skin and gradually disappeared. Asterisk whoosh whoosh whoosh. Asterisk the people who followed the white pigeon appeared one after another beside Wen Zishan. They were the masters of the Emperor realm of Azure Sun Temple. Qiu Ran frowned as he stared at the changes in Wen Zishan's expression without saying a word. Chen Qian and Jiao Shueting stood side by side, waiting quietly as if they knew something. One of the middle-aged men frowned and whispered to Jiao Shueting, "Elder Jiao, that thing just now, was it a message from the master?" Jiao Shueting nodded, "It should be, but I've only heard about it. I've never seen it with my own eyes." The middle-aged man looked shocked. The master actually sent a message. It seems, there's a great change in this world. Everyone was indifferent and uneasy. Everyone present was from the Emperor realm, and if it were an ordinary matter, it would not be worth their worry, but the current situation was different. A message from the master had appeared in Azure Sun Temple. If there was no major event, the master would not have mobilized so many people. And now, the only one who could know the accurate news was Wen Zishan himself. So they all looked at Wen Zishan, wanting to know what had happened. But from the changes in Wen Zishan's expression, they could not see any clues at all. They were anxious but helpless. After a while, Wen Zishan let out a sigh and whispered, "There's such a thing. Temple Master." Qiu Ran was the first to speak up, but when he was about to ask, Wen Zishan interrupted him and explained, "The Master of Heaven's Revelations sent a message. This time, the situation in the Four Seasons realm has changed. Heaven's Revelations. Great Emperors." The middle-aged man who spoke before could not help but exclaim in excitement, "It's really Heaven's Revelations, Great Emperors." Among the 10 great emperors, except for a few who had founded sects and were in charge of their sects, most of them were elusive. For example, the great emperors of the secular world could transform into thousands of incarnations and play around in the world. Maybe a sloppy beggar on the side of the road in the cold wind was the incarnation of the great emperors of the secular world. If someone could gain their favor, they would have a great fortune. Heaven's Revelations, great emperors of the secular world were also unpredictable. Since he was called Heaven's Revelations, he naturally had skills that other great emperors did not have. Heaven's Revelations, great emperors, could see the past and see the future. Among all the great emperors, he was the most mysterious in terms of divine technique. Although many people in the world knew that he lived in the Heaven's Secret Valley, very few people knew where it was located. Even the territory of Heaven's Secret Valley in the star boundary was unknown. The Four Seasons realm. Why would the Master of Heaven's Revelations come out? Qiu Ran looked confused. Although the Four Seasons realm secret territory was relatively famous in the Southern Territory, it did not involve the entire star territory. According to the nature of Heaven's Revelations, great emperors should not care about the opening of such a mid-level secret territory. So, The situation has changed. Wen Zishan frowned. This time, the Four Seasons realm has a connection with the Shattered Star Sea. What? Qiu Ran exclaimed. Shattered Star Sea? Jiao Shueting's pretty face also changed slightly. The Shattered Star Sea was also a top-secret place. Few people knew its specific location. Only the masters of the Emperor realm knew that the Shattered Star Sea flowed in the space crevice of the star boundary and had no fixed location. The Shattered Star Sea was the burial place of the famous Great Emperors of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor. It could even be said that it was because of the death of the Great Emperors of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor that the Shattered Star Sea was born. It was rumored that the Shattered Star Sea contained the mysteries of becoming Great Emperors, as well as many secrets and divine technique of the Great Emperors of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor. Such a place was very attractive to the people of the Emperor realm. Unfortunately, the Emperor realm cultivator could not enter the Shattered Star Sea at all. It seemed that the masters of the Emperor realm were repelled by the world principles there, so only Dao Source realm cultivators could enter. Every time the Shattered Star Sea opened, the entire star boundary would become active. The great sects would send their disciples to enter in an attempt to find the mysteries and opportunities left behind by the great emperors, eager to achieve unprecedented achievements. The Shattered Star Sea was a secret territory that was much more important than the Four Seasons realm. Chapter 2131. With Wen Zishan's explanation, everyone immediately understood why the mere opening of the Four Seasons realm could alarm the great emperors of Heaven's revelations. When the heaven-devouring great emperor was annihilated, the great emperors of Heaven's revelations were also involved. It was thanks to his divine technique that he was able to calculate the whereabouts of the great emperors of Heaven-devouring great emperor and see through his end. Otherwise, who would dare to act rashly in the face of the number one master of the star boundary? Wasn't that courting death? What did the master of Heaven's revelations say? Jiao Shueting asked nervously. When Zishan said, "It's actually not that serious. It's just that the appearance of a star seal in the Four Seasons realm is a bit unpredictable." Star seal? Qiu Ran raised his eyebrows. The voucher to enter the Shattered Star Sea? But, I know what you want to say. When Zishan waved his hand, over the years, the star seal has appeared randomly before the opening of the Shattered Star Sea, so we didn't expect that the star seal would appear in a certain sealed world. But this time, it's probably a coincidence that the opening of the Four Seasons realm happened. Anyway, it's something that appears randomly. Since we received the message from the Master of Heaven's revelations, let the disciples work hard to find it. The number of star seals is related to the number of disciples who can enter the Shattered Star Sea in the future, so we can't be careless. Now that you mention it, Lord Temple Master, it does make sense. Qiu Ran thought for a moment and nodded. In that case, pass down the order and let the disciples work harder. By the way, Master, since our Azure Sun Temple received the message from the Master of Heaven's revelations, other forces, those with a little strength will definitely get it, Wen Zishan said. In that case, in order to compete for the Star Seal, the Four Seasons realm will be in danger. This time, it's an experience for the Four Seasons realm. I'm afraid it will be several times more dangerous than in previous years. Qiu Ran couldn't help but show a worried look. When Zishan smiled and said, "Young sprouts will always have to go through trials and tribulations. They won't be able to grow if we give them too much care." Temple Master is right, Qiu Ran said respectfully. "All right, since things have changed, let's set off earlier. Pass down the order, everyone will gather and depart tomorrow morning." Wen Zishan turned to look at Jiao Shueting. He said, "Yes." Jiao Shueting replied. Wen Zishan grinned again and said, "Elder Jiao, don't forget what you promised me." Jiao Shueting's pretty face changed slightly as she gritted her teeth and said, "Do you really have to do this?" Wen Zishan chuckled. "What? Do you want to go back on your word? That's not good. A man can't live without his word." Jiao Shueting said bitterly, "I understand. I definitely won't call you master of the palace hall. I'm just disappointed." At the end of her speech, she looked like she was gnashing her teeth, and her beautiful eyes were filled with accusations of blood and tears. "I'll wait and see." When Zishan laughed, seeming to be in a good mood, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Everyone cast puzzled glances at Jiao Shueting, not knowing what happened between her and the temple master. Sister Jiao. Chen Qian said worriedly. You don't have to say anything. We'll know tomorrow. Jiao Shueting's mood was extremely bad, and her emotions were somewhat abnormal. Her chest was heaving violently, and she had no desire to explain herself. All right, then. At night, Yang Kai received the news that they were to gather at Luoying Peak the next day. To his surprise, the person who brought him the news was actually Xiao Baiyi. After the other party left a cold sentence, he left immediately. He didn't even have the intention to talk to him. Yang Kai naturally didn't care about this, but he vaguely guessed that the early gathering had something to do with what happened during the day. The next day, he woke up early and went straight in the direction of Luoying Peak. After a while, he arrived at the square on the peak. Many people had already gathered here, including Dao Source Realm and the Emperor Realm. Qiu Ran and Chen Qian, whom Yang Kai met last time, were among them. Seeing him arrive, they just glanced at him and didn't pay any more attention to him. Those Dao Source Realm disciples, on the other hand, were looking at Yang Kai curiously. It seemed that the news of the battle between Yang Kai and Shui Yi had already spread, so everyone was very interested in him. After realizing that he was really only from the First Order Dao Source Realm, a few people couldn't help but change their expressions slightly. Xiao Baiyi also stood in the crowd, not even looking at Yang Kai. Having never met these people before, Yang Kai certainly wouldn't ask for a snub, so he casually found a corner where no one was around and stood there quietly, waiting. Speaking of which, since coming to the star boundary, it was the first time he had seen a gathering of disciples from a large sect, but he boasted that he was not weaker than others, so he didn't feel inferior. Just as he was waiting quietly, he suddenly noticed that someone was walking towards him. He turned his head and saw an ordinary-looking young man in his 20s, looking at him with a smile. Not only was this young man ordinary in appearance, but he was also dressed very casually, without any temperament. If such a person was thrown into a crowd, no one would pay much attention to him. But when he walked towards them, the disciples who were originally gathered in groups of 3 to 5, whispering to each other, suddenly became completely silent, and all of them turned their gazes towards this direction. Even several masters from the Emperor Realm paid attention to this scene, and the girl named Chen Qian even showed a worried expression. The young man came to a stop not far from Yang Kai, looked him up and down, and showed a bright and gentle smile. Are you the outsider who defeated Shui Yi? Yang Kai. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes at him, and as he introduced himself, his divine sense swept over this person without leaving a trace. But what made Yang Kai's expression change slightly was that he couldn't detect the strength of this person's cultivation. After his divine sense swept over him, it was as if this guy didn't exist. If it weren't for the fact that he could see him with the naked eye, Yang Kai was afraid that he would think that there was no one in front of him. This guy was definitely not as ordinary as he looked on the surface. Combining the reactions of those disciples and the people from the Emperor Realm, Yang Kai secretly deduced. The young man smiled slightly. So it's Brother Yang. Ian, my name is Xia Sheng. Brother Xia, are you looking for me? Yang Kai skipped the greetings and went straight to the point, secretly vigilant in his heart. Nothing, just casually chatting. Xia Sheng still maintained his bright smile. I heard that Shui Yi was in your hands, so I'm a little interested in you. Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. Brother Xia, are you planning to avenge your fellow disciple? Ha ha. Xia Sheng laughed loudly, as if there was no one around, and waved his hand. Brother Yang, it's not good for you to think that way. I don't have such intentions, but, although Shui Yi is a bit of trash, to be able to defeat him with a cultivation level lower than his, Brother Yang should have some real ability. At this point, Xia Sheng's expression suddenly froze, and his entire temperament and demeanor underwent a great change, becoming arrogant and confident. People like you and me are destined to dominate this world in the future and become the overlords of this world. Let those old fellows eat shit. Yang Kai's face darkened, and the corner of his mouth kept twitching, instinctively feeling that something was wrong. Sure enough, an explosive shout came from the side. Bastard. Qiu Ran looked like he was bristling with anger as he yelled at Xia Sheng, if you dare to talk nonsense again, See if this seat doesn't tear your mouth. Vice Temple Master, Master. Xie Sheng once again returned to his ordinary appearance and panicked. Disciple didn't mean you, and that's not what I meant. Please calm down. Qiu Ran seemed to know this guy's nature, so he didn't really mean to teach him a lesson. He just cried and sighed. The upper beam is not upright. The lower beam is crooked. Who was this upper beam he was talking about? Xie Sheng looked at Yang Kai again and smiled. Let me introduce myself again. Hello, Brother Yang. My name is Xie Sheng, first place in this sect's martial arts exhibition. I guessed it. Yang Kai nodded lightly. Xiao Bai Yi, whom he met last time, was second place in the sect's martial arts exhibition, and Yang Kai felt that Xie Sheng was stronger than Xiao Bai Yi, so naturally he was first. You and I should have many opportunities to meet in the future, so, let's work hard together, Xie Sheng said. Good. I hope Brother Xie won't fall too far behind. Yang Kai smiled evilly. The smile on Xie Sheng's face faded slightly, but soon, it returned to its original appearance and grinned. Interesting, interesting. Brother Yang is really a wonderful person, much more interesting than Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai Yi, who was not far away, suddenly said angrily, Who are you calling Xiao Bai? Do you believe that I won't duel with you right now? Xie Sheng shrugged with a helpless expression. At this moment, a purple light flashed. Wen Zishan appeared in front of everyone. He raised his eyes and glanced around, then asked curiously, The leader, Elder Jiao, hasn't arrived yet? Chen Qian stepped forward and replied, Sister Jiao should be here soon. Women are so troublesome, Wen Zishan muttered to himself. After that, he suddenly looked up at the sky and smiled, She's here. He didn't know why, but at this moment, he revealed a look of great anticipation, and his eyes shone brightly. Everyone followed his gaze and looked in that direction. Sure enough, they saw a white light shooting from there at an extremely fast speed. After a short while, the white light landed in front of everyone, and when the brilliance dissipated, Jiao Xueting's beautiful figure was revealed. Elder Jiao, all the disciples have gathered, you see. Qiu Ran stepped forward and said to Jiao Xueting. After all, Jiao Xueting was fully in charge of this trip to the Four Seasons Realm's sealed world, and she would also be the one to lead the disciples to the entrance. However, due to some accidents, there were still some things to inform everyone before they left, especially about the star seal. But before Qiu Ran could finish speaking, his eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. He stared at Jiao Xueting in a daze, and wailed in his heart, This woman is definitely not Elder Jiao. The visual impact was so great that he almost blurted out, Who are you? How dare you pretend to be an elder of our temple? Quickly show your true form. Fortunately, he swallowed his words at the critical moment, but the expression on his face was very interesting. Chapter 2132. Not only Qiu Ran, but Chen Qian's beautiful eyes also widened. She covered her red lips with her small hands and looked at Jiao Xueting in surprise. The disciples of the Emperor Realm were the same. They were all dumbfounded. Even the disciples of the Emperor Realm, who could remain calm in the face of a landslide, were shocked. Everyone was dumbfounded, and their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Everyone's gaze was focused on Jiao Xueting. Everyone, why are you looking at me like that? Is there something on my face? Jiao Xueting asked lightly. The corners of her mouth rose slightly, revealing a charming smile, but her beautiful eyes were full of coldness. An inexplicable chill descended, making everyone feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Gudong. The sound of saliva swallowing could be heard one after another. Am I seeing things? Elder Jiao, she's actually smiling? A voice suddenly sounded. She's really smiling. Heavens, this disciple has been in the temple for dozens of years, but I've never seen Elder Jiao smile. Now that I've finally seen it, I can die without regrets. This isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. This is an illusion, an illusion, an illusion. The group of Dao Source Realm disciples was in a mess. None of them could believe what they were seeing. The reason was actually Jiao Xueting's smile. You all seem to have a lot of opinions about this queen. Jiao Xueting's smile remained on her face, but for some reason, it seemed very stiff. Hearing the disciples' discussion, she suddenly turned her head to look at them. None of the disciples dared to look at her, and they all looked away. They were afraid of being stared at by her. Sister Gao. Chen Qian took a step forward. She asked worriedly, "Are you okay? What's wrong with me?" Gao Shueting smiled sweetly and gritted her teeth. When she replied, her eyes were fixed on Wen Zishan. She said, "I'm very good." Oh. Chen Qian didn't know what to say. Her heart was in a mess. Not to mention the Dao Source Realm disciples, even she, an elder of the sect who was often with Jiao Shueting, saw Jiao Shueting smile for the first time today. And that smile didn't seem to disappear, which made her feel strange and terrifying. She couldn't help but shudder. Elder Jiao. Qiu Ran couldn't bear to watch any longer. Although Jiao Shueting's rare smile made him feel gratified, this frightening expression wasn't as cold as her usual expression. As the Vice Hall Master, he felt that it was necessary for him to step forward and advise her. After some consideration, he said, "Don't force yourself too much." Jiao Shueting turned to look at him. His face was still full of smiles as he said, "Forcing myself? I didn't." "What, does Master Qiu think that this consort's smile is ugly?" "That's not true." Qiu Ran jumped in fright and hurriedly denied it. He quickly changed the topic and said, "The disciples have all gathered. Elder Jiao asked to see if there was anything that needed to be said. Tell them about it." "What else do you want to say?" Jiao Shueting swept her gaze over the 20 Dao Source Realm cultivator and said straightforwardly, "We'll talk to them on the way. Now, let's go." As she spoke, she opened her mouth and spat out a mini ship. Her hands formed a seal, and the ship suddenly expanded until it was over 100 feet long before it slowly came to a stop. The ship's design was smooth and exquisite. There were dragons and phoenixes carved on the ship, and it was obviously much better than the ship that Yang Kai had obtained before. After all, it was an artifact from the Emperor realm, so this ship should be a Dao Source grade high-rank flight-type artifact. "Everyone, get on," Jiao Shueting said. The Dao Source Realm cultivator did not dare to hesitate. They all used their movement skills and leaped onto the ship. Yang Kai also mixed in with the crowd and casually found a place to sit cross-legged on the ship. Jiao Shueting waited until everyone was in position before her delicate body swayed and came to the deck. Then, she slowly turned around with a gloomy and terrifying grin on her face. She stared at Wen Zishan, who had been hiding in the crowd, and said through gritted teeth, "Wait for me to come back. I'll deal with you properly." She looked like she had suffered a great humiliation. She was just short of saying that she would not be human if she did not take revenge. Bon voyage. Wen Zishan waved his hand, and his body inexplicably trembled slightly. Me. Jiao Shueting coldly snorted and pushed her source chi. The ship immediately accelerated and flew out of the Azure Sun Mountain range. When the ship gradually disappeared from everyone's sight, a continuous burst of laughter suddenly rang out. Wen Zishan laughed so hard that tears almost flowed out of his eyes. He clutched his stomach with both hands and wanted to roll on the ground to relieve his discomfort. He laughed and said, You saw little Shueting, right? Ha 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 ha, it was so interesting. Ari, what a scandal. Qiu Ran looked speechless and shook his head sadly. He flicked his sleeve and flew away. "Temple Master, please have some self-respect." Another cultivator from the Emperor realm could not stand it anymore and felt ashamed to be associated with this person. "You're dead meat." Chen Qian looked at Wen Zishan contemptuously and said, "Wait for Sister Gao to come back from the Four Seasons realm. Let's see how she will deal with you." After that, everyone left one after another, leaving Wen Zishan alone to hang on by himself. As he laughed, he also felt quite bored. His expression became solemn as he straightened his body and said to himself sadly, "It seems that I haven't seen little Shueting's smile for many years. I really miss it. She was such a playful and clingy child when she was young. How did she suddenly become so independent and cold when she grew up? A girl really changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood." On the ship, everyone was silent. The 20 Dao Source Realm cultivators all had to silently push their source chi to resist the coldness coming from the front. Jiao Shui-ting had been standing at the front of the deck the entire time. However, she had been exuding a bone-chilling coldness since they set off. It was a coldness that seemed to be able to freeze one's soul. From time to time, Jiao Shui-ting would let out a nervous chuckle, which made everyone's hair stand on end. At this moment, who would dare to provoke Jiao Shui-ting? Therefore, no one dared to speak, not even whisper. All of them were holding their breaths and looking down. Azure Sun Temple had 20 slots to enter the Four Seasons realm. Originally, the top 20 Dao Source Realm disciples in the sect's martial arts exhibition were the only ones who could enter the Four Seasons realm, but after Shui was defeated by Yang Kai, there was an outsider like Yang Kai. Among these 20 people, 7 were women, and the rest were men. Yang Kai only knew Xiao Bai Yi and Xia Sheng, but he didn't know the names of the others. However, he was too lazy to inquire. His main purpose for this trip to the Four Seasons realm was to find the Tribulation Fruit. As long as he could find this spirit fruit, it wouldn't be Qin Caoyang's request. The ship was indeed a Dao Source grade high-rank artifact, and it flew very quickly. Along the way, they did not encounter any obstacles. After all, there was a master from the Emperor realm overseeing the Emperor realm, who was in an extremely bad mood. The fierce murderous intent she exuded made any cultivator who sensed it retreat, lest a disaster befall them. This situation lasted for 3 whole days. 3 days later, Jiao Shui-ting, who had been standing at the front of the deck with her back to the crowd, suddenly turned around. Noticing this, everyone's expression froze, and they quickly opened their eyes to look at her, feeling uneasy in the depths of their hearts. But after seeing Jiao Shui-ting's state, everyone couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Because at this moment, Jiao Shui-ting seemed to have returned to her usual indifferent and cold appearance, and the strange smile on her face had disappeared. Yang Kai heard many people secretly exhaling. Sure enough, this elder Jiao is the most reassuring. Xia Sheng patted his chest and said with lingering fear, "The previous elder Jiao was like a completely different person. It really scared me to death." As soon as he said this, Xiao Bai Yi secretly cursed and slapped him in the face. Xia Sheng was stunned and glared at Xiao Bai Yi. "Xiao Bai, you sneak attacked me? Despicable and shameless. Do you believe that?" Before he finished speaking, Xia Sheng couldn't help but shudder. He raised his head stiffly and looked at Jiao Shui-ting, who had strangely appeared in front of him and was looking down at him condescendingly. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he said weakly, "Elder Jiao, did this disciple say something wrong?" "Of course not," Jiao Shui-ting replied indifferently. Immediately, she pursed her lips and smiled. "This queen who scared you to death. Is this what this queen looks like?" Xia Sheng's face turned green. Jiao Shui-ting stretched out her hand and caught Xia Sheng off guard, then threw him out as if he was trash. Her movements were natural and unrestrained, like moving clouds and flowing water. "Elder Jiao." Xia Sheng's shout came from afar, but his whole body had turned into a small black dot. "All right, the annoying guy is no longer here." Jiao Shui-ting clapped her hands casually, glanced at everyone, and said indifferently. But all the disciples she saw lowered their heads and avoided eye contact with her. "That idiot." Xiao Bai Yi secretly cursed in his heart. At the same time, he glanced back and saw Xia Sheng chasing after them. As the champion of the sect's martial exhibition, his strength was naturally not to be underestimated, and he quickly caught up with the ship. However, there was a light curtain around the ship, so if Jiao Shui-ting didn't open it, Xia Sheng wouldn't be able to enter no matter what, so he could only stick to the light curtain and keep begging for mercy. Jiao Shui-ting turned a deaf ear to his pleas. Irritated by his pleas, she waved her hand and cut off the sound. Many people looked at Xia Sheng sympathetically, their hearts filled with sorrow. "There is something I need to tell you," Jiao Shui-ting suddenly said. Everyone held their breaths and looked at her intently. This time, the Four Seasons realm is a little different from previous years. Jiao Shui-ting continued, "You should have obtained the information about the Four Seasons realm before you set off, so I don't need to say much about it. However, this time, a star seal will appear in the Four Seasons realm." "Star seal?" Xiao Bai Yi's expression changed, as if he had thought of something, and said in surprise, "A star seal related to the Shattered Star Sea?" Jiao Shueting glanced at him approvingly and said, "Yes, it is a star seal related to the Shattered Star Sea. A star seal is a voucher to enter the Shattered Star Sea. Those who have a star seal can enter the Shattered Star Sea when it opens. So, this queen needs you to work hard to find a star seal in the Four Seasons realm. This is your primary and only task." Chapter 2133. However, because of the appearance of the star seal, the Four Seasons realm will be much more dangerous than in previous years, so in addition to looking for the star seal, the most important thing for all of you to remember is to ensure your own safety. You are all the future of the sect, and the death of any one of you is a loss to the sect, so this queen wants all of you to retreat safely. "Yes, many thanks for Elder Gao's concern." All the disciples responded in unison. "Elder Gao, what does the star seal look like?" Xiao Baiyi asked. "The star seal, its shape is not fixed, but if you obtain it, it will brand a certain part of your body and turn into a pattern. If you really have the opportunity to obtain it, you will naturally know." Disciple understands. Xiao Baiyi nodded. In addition, the star seal can be transferred. After you bring it out, you can hand it over to the sect. Of course, in return, if any of you obtain a star seal, you will be eligible to enter the Shattered Star Sea in the future. Everyone heard this and could not help but hold their breath, looking very excited. Then, what if this disciple is lucky enough to obtain 2 or more? Xiao Baiyi asked again. Jiao Shueting said, "Keep one for yourself and hand the rest to the sect. The sect will give you a corresponding reward." Speaking of this, she suddenly turned to look at Yang Kai and said, "You too." "Me?" Yang Kai looked surprised. "Yes." Jiao Shueting gently nodded. "Although you are not a disciple of my Azure Sun Temple, since you have occupied a spot in my temple, you naturally have to abide by the rules." "All right." Yang Kai nodded helplessly. He could not win against Jiao Shueting. It was estimated that when he came out of the Four Seasons realm, Azure Sun Temple would examine his body in detail to see if he had obtained a star seal. That's all I want to say. As for the rest, there is nothing to say. You can do as you please. Jiao Shueting did not say anything. After she finished speaking, she returned to the bow of the ship and stood there quietly. She was like a statue, motionless. Outside the ship, Xie Sheng still maintained the same speed as the ship, showing a pitiful look as he opened his mouth and shouted. It looked like he was begging for mercy. But Jiao Shueting did not even look at him. Xie Sheng was helpless and could only turn his eyes to Xiao Baiyi, seemingly hoping that Xiao Baiyi would put in a good word for him. Xiao Baiyi decisively turned his head in another direction, on the ship. Yang Kai frowned slightly and pondered. He was considering whether to ask Jiao Shueting for information on the Four Seasons realm. However, this woman seemed to be a bit temperamental, and because of the previous encounter, Yang Kai didn't want to have any contact with her. He didn't want her to see through him. Just as he was hesitating, he suddenly felt someone quietly poke him. He looked back. He noticed a woman sitting not far from him. She was looking at him with pursed red lips. This woman looked to be around 20 years old, but her real age was definitely higher than that. Her figure should be very tall, her skin was white, her appearance was delicate, and her hair was elegant and moving. "Miss, what's the matter?" Yang Kai asked curiously. "You don't have this, right? This is for you." As the woman spoke, she handed a jade slip to Yang Kai. Yang Kai raised his eyebrows and reached out to take it. He scanned it with his divine sense and checked the contents of the jade slip. He couldn't help but be overjoyed and said, "This is..." What was recorded in this jade slip was information on the Four Seasons realm. Every time the Four Seasons realm opened, Azure Sun Temple would send disciples to enter it, so they were quite familiar with the situation inside. The information recorded in this jade slip not only included the dangerous barriers of the Four Seasons realm, but also the names of various monster beast species, the general division of strength, and even an outline map. He was just considering whether to ask Jiao Shueting for such information, but he was a little hesitant. He didn't expect someone to take the initiative to give it to him. Icing on the cake was always better than timely help, so Yang Kai had a good impression of this woman. She probably guessed that he didn't have such a thing, so she quietly gave him a copy. From this point, it was not difficult to see that this woman had a good heart. "Many thanks, young lady. May I ask young lady's name?" Yang Kai thanked her sincerely. The other party had done him a favor, so he had to know her name. "Murong Xiao Xiao." Yang Kai nodded and was about to say something more when Xiao Baiyi suddenly said, "Xiao Xiao, why are you talking nonsense with an outsider?" Murong Xiao Xiao heard this and stuck out her tongue at Yang Kai, but she couldn't disobey Xiao Baiyi, so she could only keep quiet. Yang Kai said, "This Yang will remember young lady's kindness. Small matter." Murong Xiao Xiao smiled slightly and didn't care. "Brother Xiao Bai." Yang Kai turned to look at Xiao Baiyi again. "Who are you calling?" Xiao Baiyi's face suddenly turned cold. "Brother Xiao." Yang Kai changed his words. "Although I am not a disciple of Azure Sun Temple, since we are going to enter the Four Seasons realm together, we can be considered companions. Who is your companion?" Xiao Baiyi looked disdainful. "You stole Shuiyi's slot. I will settle this with you sooner or later." "Brother Xiao, why are you doing this?" Yang Kai shook his head and sighed. "Maybe you will need my help in the Four Seasons realm." "You!" Xiao Baiyi coldly snorted. "If there is something this Xiao can't handle, it's useless to ask for your help. If you think so, then I have nothing to say." Yang Kai smiled bitterly and shook his head. It seemed that Xiao Baiyi now bore a grudge against Yang Kai, but this was not surprising as his relationship with Shuiyi was quite good. Yang Kai had snatched Shuiyi's spot, so as his senior brother, it was natural that Xiao Baiyi would not give him any face. If he were to talk and laugh with him now, there would be a real problem. It was only human nature. Jiao Shuiting didn't intend to pay attention to the confrontation between these Dao Source realms and just stood quietly in place, controlling the ship to fly. Time flew by and 5 days passed. On this day, a huge valley appeared in front of them. In the valley, there were many figures gathered in groups, as if they were waiting for something. From the crowd, there were even the auras of several masters from the Emperor realm. Perceiving this, Yang Kai's expression shook as he realized that he had arrived at his destination. The information provided by Qin Zhaoyang was similar to what was recorded in the jade slip given by Murong Xiao Xiao. The entrance to the Four Seasons realm was in a nameless valley. This valley was usually unremarkable, and there was nothing special that could attract people's attention. However, before the opening of the Four Seasons realm, there would be a rich concentration of world energy gathering here. When it reached a certain level, the entrance to the sealed world would open, and it would last for 33 days. After 33 days, the entrance would close, and at that time, the cultivator who was still in the Four Seasons realm would not be able to come out. The cultivator who stayed in the valley should be the cultivator who arrived here in advance. From this point of view, Azure Sun Temple was relatively late, because in the valley, the location was better and the place with rich world energy had already been occupied. The ship came slowly, and the cultivator in the valley obviously noticed it and looked up. After seeing the symbol of Azure Sun Temple on the ship, many people's expressions became serious. After all, Azure Sun Temple was considered a top sect in the entire Southern Territory, and this ship alone represented a kind of authority and identity. From the information recorded in the Jade Slip, Yang Kai learned that top sects like Azure Sun Temple had 20 spots to enter the Four Seasons realm. The same was true for Heavenly Martial Holy Land, Orthodoxy Temple, Violet Source Chamber of Commerce, and Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce. As for the Overlord of the Southern Territory, Star Soul Palace, they had 40 spots, which was twice as many as Azure Sun Temple. The lower-ranked sects had about 10 spots. There were even some sects that only had 3 to 5 slots. Yang Kai wasn't too clear about how these spots were divided, but presumably it had been carefully calculated and coordinated. However, judging from the 400 to 500 people gathered below, there were also a lot of sects in the Southern Territory. Jiao Shuiting stood at the bow of the ship and just watched for a while before finding a place to let the ship land. After the disciples got off the ship, she put away the artifact again. "You all rest here and don't cause trouble. This queen is going to find the other master to discuss some things." After leaving this sentence, she turned and left. Everyone seemed to have expected this, so they were not surprised. They took out the things they had prepared in advance from their space rings and set up tents. Huff! A person suddenly fell from the sky like a meteorite falling from the sky, smashing a big hole in the ground. Yang Kai fixed his eyes and found that this guy was Xia Sheng, who had been deliberately ignored by Jiao Shueting. He had been chasing the ship for a full 5 days, relying only on his own source qi and not falling behind too much, arriving here at the same time as everyone else. At this moment, even though he was a little out of breath, he showed no signs of exhaustion. Finally, I made it. Xia Sheng looked weak as he looked at Xiao Baiyi plaintively and said, Xiao Bai, you're too mean. The veins on Xiao Baiyi's forehead throbbed, but he cleverly ignored him. Brother Yang, you didn't say a good word for me. You made me fly all the way here. Xia Sheng put his hands on his knees and rolled his eyes at Yang Kai. You're so cold to me, how can we laugh together in the future? Yang Kai said helplessly, I'm just an outsider, it's none of my business. Ha, forget it, you guys are really unreliable. Xia Sheng waved his hand and sat down on the ground, like a dying fish that had finally returned to the water, a satisfied expression on his face. Kai Yang glanced at him, but didn't pay any more attention to him. He found an empty spot and sat down cross-legged. Obviously, there was still some time before the opening of the Four Seasons realm, and there were many masters here. He didn't want to run around and cause trouble, so he simply sat down and rested where everyone from Azure Sun Temple gathered. Chapter 2134. Time passed slowly, and gradually, more and more cultivators arrived from all over the place. However, there weren't many of them, so they were all cultivators from small sects or families that were relatively far away. After they arrived, they were smart enough to find a place where no one was around to settle down. Those who were familiar with each other would naturally gather in one place, preparing to join forces in the Four Seasons realm and go all out. Those who could enter the Four Seasons realm were all Dao Source realm cultivators. Origin King realm cultivators were not qualified at all, so they would only be courting death if they entered. However, this did not mean that the Four Seasons realm masters could not enter from the Emperor realm. In fact, the Emperor realm could also enter, but every entry of the Emperor realm would cause some instability in the entrance. Once more than 3 cultivators from the Emperor realm entered, the entrance would close directly. As a result, the few spots for the Emperor realm could not be allocated at all, so under the proposal of Star Soul Palace, the Emperor realm cultivator would not be allowed to enter the Four Seasons realm, lest the entrance closed prematurely. Yang Kai learned this information from the jade slip given to him by Murong Xiao Xiao. He recalled the information recorded in the jade slip in his mind, trying to memorize it all while strengthening the connection between himself and Myriad's sword. Although this Emperor artifact would eventually be returned to the Qin family, it should be able to help him a lot in the Four Seasons realm. What are you doing? Suddenly, a woman's angry shout rang in his ears, and at the same time, a strong force burst out from somewhere. The woman who had shouted before immediately exclaimed and groaned as if she had been hit hard. Yang Kai opened his eyes. He frowned and looked in the direction of the source of the sound. Because he recognized the owner of this voice. It was Murong Xiao Xiao who had given him the information about the Four Seasons realm. He felt very strange. Murong Xiao Xiao was an elite disciple of Azure Sun Temple, and her cultivation was not low. Who dared to cause trouble for her in this place? Looking around, Murong Xiao Xiao was biting her red lips at the moment, looking in a certain direction with fear and anger. Beside her, another Azure Sun Temple female disciple was supporting her and asked nervously, Xiao Xiao, are you alright? Murong Xiao Xiao shook her head, indicating that she was fine. However, judging from her slightly disordered aura, it was clear that she had just experienced something dangerous. She was looking at a place where a group of Dao Source realm cultivators were gathered, and among this group of cultivator, there was one person who was extremely strange. This person was a man, but there seemed to be an invisible dividing line in the middle of his body. The skin on the left side of his body and even his hair were fiery red. On the other hand, the right side was snow white. 2 completely different colors appeared on the same person at the same time, forming an extremely strong visual impact. The left side was masculine, while the right side was feminine. Murong Xiao Xiao glared at him. It was this person. And he raised one hand high. This also meant that he was the culprit from before, and there was still a trace of power at the tip of his finger that had not dissipated. A figure flashed and stood in front of Murong Xiao Xiao, quietly staring at the monster cultivator. It was Xie Sheng. It was strange to say that Xie Sheng's figure was not tall at the moment, but it was like a thick mountain, giving people a very reliable feeling. Yang Kai frowned, stood up, and slowly walked over there. Xiao Xiao, what happened? Xie Sheng asked calmly. Murong Xiao Xiao said, I don't know, this person suddenly attacked me. Oh! Xie Sheng narrowed his eyes. He said faintly, interesting, someone actually dares to bully my Azure Sun Temple. It's impossible for me to let it go. As he spoke, his eyes bloomed with a very dangerous cold light. The strange-looking cultivator on the opposite side also cast his gaze on Xie Sheng. The two's gazes collided in the void, and there seemed to be sparks sputtering. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. On the side of Azure Sun Temple, the cultivator gathered on the other side also looked solemn, secretly urging their source chi. It seemed that a great battle was about to break out. The movement here quickly alarmed the other cultivator waiting here. Like a stone thrown into a calm lake, the ripples set off were quickly noticed by everyone, and they all looked over curiously. Xie Sheng. The strange-looking cultivator suddenly raised the corner of his mouth, revealing a wicked smile, and said. It seemed that he knew Xie Sheng, but this was the first time he saw him. Wu Chang. Xie Sheng raised his eyebrows. Yang Kai frowned. He had never heard of the name Wu Chang before, but judging from Xie Sheng's expression at the moment, this guy was obviously not easy to deal with. This person is very likely to have some special physique. That's why he has such a strange body. He is Xie Sheng of Azure Sun Temple. It is said that he is the champion of this Azure Sun Temple's sect martial arts exhibition. Among the onlooking cultivator, someone immediately exclaimed. From the looks of it, Xie Sheng's popularity was quite high. Wu Chang. Isn't he the rising star of heavenly martial Holy Land? Yes, looking at him, it must be right. It is rumored that Wu Chang has a yin and yang dual body. So this is what he looks like. It's really an eye-opener. Sha. Keep your voice down. I heard that Wu Chang is temperamental, cruel and violent. If he hears, what are you afraid of? There are so many people here, he can still. Before this person finished speaking, he suddenly shut up, because he found that Wu Chang, who was confronting Xie Sheng over there, suddenly turned his head and stared at him coldly. A mysterious power suddenly exuded from the other party's red and white pupils, manifesting in front of him, turning into a huge red and white vortex. From the vortex came a sensational strangling force, covering him. The man screamed in horror and hurriedly tried to retreat. But what caused him to be extremely horrified was that his body actually became extremely stiff all of a sudden, and he was completely unable to move. He could only stand on the spot with a pale face, and his eyes trembled as he watched the vortex ceaselessly revolve and envelop him. Ah! Asterisk peng, asterisk with a loud bang, the man's head exploded like a watermelon, and red and white matter sputtered in all directions. The cultivator next to him hurriedly retreated. The headless corpse slowly fell to the ground, splashing up a cloud of dust and bright red. It was a horrible sight to behold. The other cultivator who had been talking to this person saw that his companion had been so tragically killed, and instead of having the thought to seek revenge on Wu Chang, he was scared silly and fell to the ground, as if he had lost his soul. His upper and lower rows of teeth kept clattering together, making cracking sounds, and he couldn't say a word. These two people were disciples of some small sect or family, and it wasn't easy to get a spot to enter the Four Seasons realm, but one of them was met with disaster because of a slip of the tongue. At the place where Orthodoxy Temple was stationed, a handsome blue-robed man stood there and watched this tragic scene. He couldn't help but snort coldly and said to his junior brother and junior sister, "Remember, after entering the Four Seasons realm, if you encounter Wu Chang, run as far as you can, and never confront him head-on." Yes, senior brother Zhuang. Everyone felt the same way and quickly responded. After seeing Wu Chang's cruel killing methods, how could they have the heart to compete with him? In their minds, the only one who could compete with Wu Chang was their eldest brother, Zhuang Biyu Fan. Is that Wu Chang of Heavenly Martial Holy Land? At the Star Soul Palace's camp, Lan Xun, dressed in blue, floated in the air like a fairy, with a handsome white-faced young man guarding her on her left. Lan Xun frowned slightly at this moment and asked with some displeasure. After all, she was a woman, and seeing the scene just now made her somewhat uncomfortable and unhappy. Yes. The white-faced man nodded. As he spoke, his eyes never left Lan Xun's delicate cheeks, a fanatical look of adoration flashing across his eyes as he said, "I've fought with this guy several times before, and he's very difficult to deal with. Even Big Brother Xiao can't deal with him?" Lan Xun asked with some surprise. Xiao Chen said, "If I use the Emperor artifact given to me by my father, Master, I can definitely defeat him, but the price is too high." Is that so? Lan Xun didn't take it seriously. Although Xiao Chen was Xiao Yuyang's son and had an Emperor artifact given to him by Xiao Yuyang, how could Wu Chang not have an Emperor artifact? The Heavenly Martial Holy Land he came from was not an ordinary force, and as the #1 rising star of Heavenly Martial Holy Land, it was natural for him to have an Emperor artifact to defend himself. Does Princess not believe me? Xiao Chen vaguely noticed something and raised his brow. If Princess wants to see it, I can go now, no need. Lan Xun waved her hand and frowned. I'm just saying it casually. Xiao Chen said, but Wu Chang dared to kill people in public. He really doesn't put my Star Soul Palace in his eyes. No matter what, the Southern Territory is not a place where Heavenly Martial Holy Land can do whatever they want. Lan Xun was non-committal, her beautiful eyes flashing for a moment before she suddenly exclaimed in surprise, her beautiful eyes flashing with surprise as she stared at a figure in the distance. It's that guy. Lan Xun thought to herself. She still remembered that when she broke through to the Dao Source Realm in the 3rd layer of the 5-colored treasure pagoda last time, this guy had used some unknown method to sneak into the 3rd layer and steal many of her principal fragments. However, it was fortunate that he appeared, otherwise, even if she could have successfully broken through at that time, she would not have been able to avoid suffering, and her Yuan Qi would have been seriously injured. Lan Xun was very interested in this person and wanted to know what method he had used to sneak into the 3rd layer without anyone noticing. She also wanted to know what kind of divine ability he had used to snatch so much principal strength. However, after she came out of the 5-colored treasure pagoda, she was in a hurry to consolidate her cultivation, so she didn't think much about this person. Unexpectedly, she saw him again in this mountain valley, and he had also broken through to the Dao Source realm. Chapter 2135. So he is a disciple of Azure Sun Temple? Lan Xun saw Yang Kai standing with a group of people from Azure Sun Temple and thought naturally. Princess, what did you say? Xiao Chen asked. Nothing. Lan Xun shook her head. Xiao Chen frowned slightly. Although he was unhappy that Lan Xun didn't want to tell him anything, she was the daughter of the great emperors after all. Her status was respected, so he couldn't ask. He could only follow her gaze. After seeing Yang Kai over there, he couldn't help but snort coldly in his heart. What does this little guy have that the princess cares about? On the other side, after Wu Chang killed the disciple of the small family, his face was calm, as if he had just killed a cockroach, and continued to look at Xie Sheng. Xie Sheng said, Brother Wu Chang is so powerful. Wu Chang smiled coldly and said nothing. I don't care about the life or death of others, but shouldn't Brother Wu Chang give me a reasonable explanation for attacking my junior sister? Xie Sheng narrowed his eyes and looked ahead. Wu Chang said, Brother Xie wants an explanation? Okay. My explanation is that no one can fly over my head, except for the dead. Xie Sheng was startled. He never thought that such a ridiculous reason would cause him to attack Murong Xiao Xiao. Murong Xiao Xiao also came back to her senses at this moment, pursed her lips and said, I just wanted to go to Star Soul Palace. She had an acquaintance in Star Soul Palace who she hadn't seen for a long time. At this moment, she naturally wanted to come here to catch up. How could she have known that she would be attacked by Wu Chang as soon as she flew up? Wu Chang said, Brother Xie should be glad. She is from Azure Sun Temple. Otherwise what? Otherwise she would have been a dead person. So that's how it is. Xie Sheng grinned. Suddenly, he did something that no one expected. With a leap, he flew over Wu Chang's head like a bolt of lightning, then turned around and quickly flew back to Wu Chang's side, waiting until he reached a certain distance. After a certain distance, he turned around again and flew over Wu Chang's head. As he flew, he shouted, "I flew over, I flew back, I flew back, I flew back, if you have the guts, come and hit me." After flying back and forth several times, he simply stood directly above Wu Chang's head with his hands on his waist. Looking down, he said arrogantly, "Believe it or not, I will piss on your head." As he spoke, he actually pulled up his pants, looking as if he was ready to go all out. Murong Xiao Xiao and the other female disciples of Azure Sun Temple blushed. Xiao Baiyi and the others wore black lines on their faces as they turned their heads away, obviously not recognizing this person. Mainly because of this behavior is Xie Sheng. Therefore, the moment Xie Sheng pulled up his pants, he let out a low roar and shook his arms. A tornado-like vigorous energy soared into the sky, wanting to engulf Xie Sheng. Petty tricks. Xie Sheng coldly snorted and flipped his palm. He slapped downwards. Source chi surged, and the world principles became chaotic. A huge palm print suddenly formed, like a giant mountain falling from the sky. Before it really fell, it gave off a sense of oppression that could destroy everything. Hong, the giant palm and the tornado collided, and the world energy suddenly raged and burst out in all directions. At this moment, Wu Chang had already jumped up and put his palms together. One hand was fiery red, and the other was snow white. Two completely different auras fluctuated, and as he changed his hand seals, mysterious runes appeared around him. He rushed towards Xie Sheng with the force of thunder. A solemn expression appeared on Xie Sheng's face. He changed his hand seal, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard in the air. Immediately, weapons of different shapes appeared beside him. Each weapon was formed from the energy of the world. There were many of them, and there was a variety of them. He stretched out his hand, and the countless weapons slashed downwards as if they had received an order. Hong hong hong, more violent sounds rang out, and the dazzling light engulfed the figures of Xie Sheng and Wu Chang. For a moment, no one could see the two figures clearly. They could only hear the explosions of energy and the sounds of fists and feet clashing in the chaotic void. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at the battle above. He was also dazzled. This was a contest between the top rising stars of the two top sects in the Southern Territory. In other words, it represented the highest level of strength in the entire Southern Territory. It was rare for him to witness such a battle. Not only could he compare his own shortcomings from the battle between the two, but he could also gather some information. Brother Xie, will he be okay? Murong Xiao Xiao had a look of self-blame at this moment. If she had not accidentally flown over Wu Chang's head, this kind of trouble would not have arisen. How could anything happen to him? Xiao Baiyi coldly snorted, as if he was not worried about Xie Sheng's life or death at all. He said lightly, even if an ordinary person from the Emperor realm attacked him, he would still have a chance to escape. What can a trivial Wu Chang do to him? Yang Kai's heart moved when he heard this. Xiao Baiyi obviously knew some details about Xie Sheng, but he did not say anything, so Yang Kai naturally did not ask more. However, judging from his tone, Xie Sheng's true strength was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Of course, Wu Chang probably did not use his full strength. Naive. In a remote place in the valley, in the encampment of a sect called the Octagonal Door, a young man sitting cross-legged and meditating watched the battle in the sky for a while and commented disdainfully. Although the Octagonal Door was not a top sect in the Southern Territory, it was still not bad. It could be considered to be on the same level as Flying Saint Palace, and there was a master from the Emperor realm in the sect. Therefore, when the Four Seasons realm opened this time, the Octagonal Door was lucky enough to get 7 spots to enter. Among these 7 people, their cultivations varied. Some were third-order Dao Source realm while others were second-order and first-order Dao Source realms. The young man who spoke was only a second-order, but the attitude of the others seemed to be following his lead. The only third-order Dao Source realm cultivator was a middle-aged man in his 40s. Hearing this, he smiled and said, "Junior brother Luo Yuan, do you think this kind of battle is not worth your attention?" Luo Yuan said, "They're just testing each other, what's there to see?" "They're still testing each other?" Another woman in the second-order Dao Source realm exclaimed, "Why do I feel like they can't wait to kill each other?" "That's because your cultivation is not enough," Luo Yuan said bluntly, not caring about the face of his fellow sect members. The woman choked for a moment and could only laugh awkwardly. The middle-aged man said, "Junior brother Luo Yuan really has sharp eyes. This time in the Four Seasons realm, we will have to rely on you, junior brother." Luo Yuan heard this and frowned. "Don't worry, this time in the Four Seasons realm, I will definitely make the octagonal door famous in the Southern Territory, but I have no interest in bringing along trash like you. When you enter, don't come looking for me, otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." Everyone saw how arrogant he was, but they didn't dare to say anything. They even seemed to be a little afraid of him. The middle-aged man said, "Naturally, we won't drag junior brother down. When the time comes, you can do whatever you want." Luo Yuan snorted coldly and closed his eyes. The others looked at each other, feeling depressed. Everyone was a Dao Source realm cultivator, and their strength wasn't too bad, but being called trash in front of them was naturally unacceptable. But knowing Luo Yuan's temper and character, they didn't dare to refute. The battle in the void was still going on. Xie Sheng and Wu Chang were evenly matched, and neither could do anything to the other. The void was collapsing, and the world principles were in chaos. Enough. Suddenly, a furious roar filled with majesty rang out. As soon as this voice rang out, Xie Sheng and Wu Chang, who were in the middle of their battle, froze in midair as if they had been struck by lightning. Their faces paled as cold sweat dripped down their foreheads. Two rays of brilliance flashed and appeared under the feet of the two. Immediately, the brilliance suddenly radiated out like a spider's web, turning into two cage-like existences in the blink of an eye, imprisoning Xie Sheng and Wu Chang in midair. The voice sounded again. Azure Sun Temple's Xie Sheng, Heavenly Marshal Holy Land's Wu Chang, acted without permission and started a fight. "This king will punish you by confinement until the opening of the sealed world. I hope you will learn from this." Xie Sheng heard this and his face turned green. He hurriedly said, "Master Xiao, disciple is innocent." He immediately recognized the owner of the voice as Silver Star Envoy Xiao Yuyang from Star Soul Palace, so he quickly begged for mercy. Xiao Yuyang had no intention of paying attention to him. On the other side, Wu Chang, who was also imprisoned in midair, glanced at him and coldly snorted, "No backbone. It's none of your business." Xie Sheng rolled his eyes at him and continued to shout, "Master Xiao, please understand. Disciple has always abided by the rules. If it wasn't for someone provoking him, he would never do such a thing. Master Xiao, please let me go." After shouting for a while, he probably felt that it was hopeless, so he changed his tune and said, "Fine, Master Xiao, it's fine if you put me in confinement, but can you put me down? Being imprisoned in midair like this, it's so embarrassing. Can you shut up?" Wu Chang didn't think much of it at first. After all, it was a second-order Emperor Realm Master who punished him, so it was natural that he couldn't resist. But after Xie Sheng said this, he suddenly felt that it was really embarrassing to be looked at by so many people, and he immediately became angry out of shame. Xie Sheng glanced at him and said, "What's wrong? Did I disturb you?" "Noisy." Wu Chang coldly snorted. "You still dare to blabber?" Xie Sheng was angry. He pulled up his pants and said, "Believe it or not, I'll still hit you in the face even if I'm like this." Wu Chang heard this and the corners of his mouth twitched a few times. He took a deep breath and tactfully closed his eyes. Others might be shameless, but he couldn't. He just left a harsh sentence, "Wait until we enter the sealed world, then we'll fight again." Chapter 2136. Because of the interference of the masters from the Emperor realm, this fierce battle was resolved just like that. Is this enough? At the same time, somewhere in Star Soul Palace's encampment, Xiao Yuyang looked at Jiao Shueting and Chen Wenhao and asked. Jiao Shueting said, "Thank you, Master Xiao." Chen Wenhao also nodded slightly. Although the rising stars of the two sects were not very happy when they met, It did not affect the relationship between their respective sects in the Emperor realm. In their opinion, it was just a competition between young people. Who hadn't experienced this before? It's fine, but those two little guys are quite active, Xiao Yuyang chuckled. Elder Gao has Xia Sheng as his disciple, and Brother Chen has Wu Chang as his disciple. I'm so envious. Feng Ming suddenly said sourly. Gao Shueting glanced at him and said, Doesn't Orthodoxy Temple have Zhuang Biyu Fan? Feng Ming smiled and said, Biyu Fan is extraordinary, but he only has an ordinary constitution. How can he be compared to those two little guys? Didn't Brother Feng pass down the heaven and earth reverse phantom secret art? Chen Wenhao looked at Feng Ming and said, There's no need to be modest at this time. Being too modest is hypocritical. Ha ha. Feng Ming grinned and responded with a smile. That's enough. How long do you want to test each other? Xiao Yuyang couldn't help but roll his eyes. It's a good thing that the little guys are active. Just watch and don't get involved. We're all from the Southern Territory, so infighting is not good. Master Xiao is right. Everyone nodded in unison. By the way, Master Xiao, Gao Shueting suddenly said, last time, when the three of us went to Star Soul Palace to ask for advice, did they respond? Hearing this, Feng Ming and Chen Wenhao both looked serious. They listened attentively. Xiao Yuyang frowned and pondered for a while before saying, about the ancient great demon. The great emperors said that the great demon is not extinct, but has gone into hibernation. However, the great emperors do not know where exactly it is. Even the great emperors do not know? Feng Ming's expression changed. The great emperors only said 8 words to me, Xiao Yuyang said in a deep voice. Which 8 words? Gao Shueting asked. Half dead, half alive, half alive. What does that mean? Feng Ming was confused. Xiao Yuyang shrugged, I don't understand either. But you can rest assured. That ancient great demon has been sealed for so many years that he is no longer as powerful as he used to be. If he dares to appear in the future and do evil, this seat will personally deal with him. With Lord Xiao's words, we can rest assured. Chen Wenhao heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. Previously, he had joined forces with Feng Ming and Gao Shueting to fight against the great ancient devil. Unfortunately, they had failed at the last moment. The great ancient devil had used a powerful divine ability to trap them in a dark and boundless world, waiting for them to escape. The great demon had disappeared. In desperation, they could only go to the Star Soul Palace to request an audience with the great emperors, hoping to get some instructions from the great emperors. Unfortunately, the 3 of them went to the Star Soul Palace but did not see the great emperors. In the end, they could only tell Xiao Yuyang. He asked him to pass on the message. As soon as Gao Shueting arrived, she hurried to find Xiao Yuyang. She wanted to know about the great demon. Well, let's not think about the great demon for now. Let's talk about the 4 Seasons realm, Xiao Yuyang said. When everyone heard this, they knew that he was going to talk about the star seal. Their expressions immediately became serious. In the Azure Sun Temple's encampment, Yang Kai, who was meditating and recuperating, suddenly opened his eyes and looked in a certain direction. He frowned and pondered for a while, then stood up and walked in that direction. Junior brother Yang. Murong Xiao Xiao saw this scene and hurriedly called out. He hurriedly shouted, Where are you going? Once bitten, twice shy. Just now, she wanted to go to the Star Soul Palace to find an old friend to reminisce about the past, but she did not expect to cause such a disturbance and cause Xia Sheng to be grounded. She blamed herself very much. At this moment, seeing that Yang Kai wanted to leave the encampment, she hurriedly asked with concern. I'm just walking around. Yang Kai smiled slightly. Then you have to be careful. Murong Xiao Xiao did not stop him and just reminded him. Yang Kai nodded lightly and continued to walk forward. Why do you care about the life or death of an outsider? Xiao Baiyi snorted unhappily. Murong Xiao Xiao said, Junior brother Yang, he came with us after all. You still call him junior brother? Xiao Baiyi glared at Murong Xiao Xiao. He is not a disciple of my temple. Murong Xiao Xiao stuck out her tongue and said, Brother Xiao, you don't like him? It's not that I don't like him, Xiao Baiyi coldly snorted, I just don't like him. Murong Xiao Xiao slowly shook her head and did not say anything more. On the other side, Yang Kai walked all the way until he walked out of the valley and came to a dense forest before stopping. The breeze was bleak and the leaves rustled. Yang Kai sighed and said, Since you asked me to come here, why don't you show yourself? As soon as his voice fell, he heard a burst of giggles and immediately, a beautiful figure suddenly appeared on top of a tree, looking down at him condescendingly, her pair of beautiful eyes full of curiosity and a strange look. She stared at Yang Kai and clicked her tongue, I didn't expect you to have already broken through to the Dao Source realm in such a short time. As expected of a master from a low-level star territory, your aptitude is really extraordinary. Yang Kai looked up at her and smiled meaningfully. Protector Bien, it's been a long time. The woman who quietly sent him a message and asked him to come here to see her was Bien Yuqing, one of the 4 protectors of Blue Feather Sect. At that time, it was this woman who accepted him into Blue Feather Sect. Blue Feather Sect was also Yang Kai's first stop in the star boundary. Bien Yuqing knew some of his details and understood that he was a cultivator from a low-level star territory. It was for this reason that Bien Yuqing accepted him as a disciple. Otherwise, with Yang Kai's second-order origin king cultivation at that time, Bien Yuqing probably would not have even spared him a glance. This woman had the cultivation of the third-order Dao Source realm. Seeing Bien Yuqing, Yang Kai remembered Liu Xianyun who was with him at that time. This woman was the same as him. Both came from a low-level star territory, but came from a place called Great Desolate Star Territory and was also accepted into Blue Feather Sect by Bien Yuqing. Unfortunately, when they were fleeing, Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun were separated. After such a long time, Yang Kai wondered how Liu Xianyun was doing. It's rare that you still remember this queen is very gratified. Just as he was contemplating, Bien Yuqing smiled sweetly. With a slight push of her feet, she slowly landed in front of Yang Kai like a goddess descending from the sky. Protector Bien's great kindness is engraved in this junior's heart, how could he forget? Yang Kai smiled slightly. Although Bien Yuqing might have other purposes for accepting him into Blue Feather Sect at that time, this woman did not harshly abuse him. Of course, she also did not deliberately take care of him, so Yang Kai's attitude towards her was relatively calm. Although he said so, in fact, he did not have any intention of being grateful. Bien Yuqing looked at him and said, Your ability to lie with a straight face has improved. If you really remember this queen's kindness, how could you come over so reluctantly? How could I? Yang Kai looked wronged, it's just. I didn't expect to meet Protector Bien here. After a pause, he said, Protector Bien didn't come alone, right? When he said this, he glanced to the side, intentionally or unintentionally. Bien Yuqing raised her brow. She said in surprise, Boy, your senses are quite sharp. She waved to the side and said, Don't hide, come out. As soon as she said this, another person laughed loudly. Haha, junior brother Yang, it's been a long time since we last met, but you're still as elegant as ever. Yang Kai looked to the side with a smile and cupped his fists. Brother Ku. This person was Ku Wu. He was also Bien Yuqing's confidant. Ku Wu was the first Dao Source realm master Yang Kai saw after coming to the star boundary. It was also this guy who captured him and Liu Xianyun and brought them to Bien Yuqing. However, unlike Bien Yuqing, Ku Wu took care of Yang Kai a little during that time. So, Yang Kai's impression of him was quite good. Junior brother Yang is already a Dao Source realm master. This Ku is really surprised. Ku Wu looked up and down at Yang Kai with a surprised expression. After all, when he first met Yang Kai, the other party was only a second-order origin king who knew nothing about the star boundary. How long had it been since they met? The other party was already at his level. No wonder it was rumored that a cultivator from a low-level star territory had outstanding aptitude and extraordinary potential. He didn't believe it at first, but after seeing Yang Kai, he had to believe it. It was just a fluke. Yang Kai responded casually. But, what surprised this queen even more was that you actually became a disciple of Azure Sun Temple. It seems that Azure Sun Temple has put a lot of effort into you. Bien Yuqing smiled slightly. She also accidentally saw Yang Kai when she was watching the fun just now, so she secretly sent him a message and asked him to come out and meet her. Yang Kai was in Azure Sun Temple's encampment, so she naturally thought that Yang Kai had joined Azure Sun Temple. If so, it would explain why he could be promoted to the Dao Source realm so quickly. Azure Sun Temple was not comparable to a small sect like Blue Feather Sect that didn't even have a member of the Emperor realm. The sect was rich in resources. Protector Bien misunderstood. Yang Kai shook his head. I am not from Azure Sun Temple. Do you think this queen is blind? Bien Yuqing glared at Yang Kai angrily. Yang Kai said, it's just that for some reason, I came with the people of Azure Sun Temple, believe it or not. Is that so? Bien Yuqing was stunned. Although she was also a little surprised, she felt that Yang Kai didn't need to lie to her about this matter, so she didn't ask any more. I'm curious, which force do Protector Bien and Brother Ku represent? Yang Kai looked at the two suspiciously. Ku Wu said, Blue Feather Sect, of course. You're still in Blue Feather Sect? Yang Kai's face changed as he immediately thought of Blue Feather Sect's sect master, Wu Mengchuan. This guy was the descendant of the great emperors of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor. After Yang Kai released him from the bone prison, he turned the entire Blue Feather Sect upside down. Miao Qi, Tong Tsong, and Zhu Junshan, the three sect protectors, were not his opponents at all and were killed on the spot. Only Bien Yuqing had something to do at that time and escaped. Chapter 2137. At that time, Ku Wu also escaped because he followed Bien Yuqing out to handle some matters. Otherwise, with Wu Mengchuan's temperament at that time, it would not have been surprising if he had killed them all. It seems, you have thought of something. Bien Yuqing suddenly sneered and gritted her teeth. Smelly brat, if it weren't for you, this protector would not have fallen into such a situation. Now, my life and death are in the hands of others. Yang Kai's face changed slightly as he played dumb. Protector Bien, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Ku Wu sighed and said, Junior brother Yang, sect master, was it you who released him? Hearing him ask this, Yang Kai could not deny it and nodded, yes. After saying so, he quickly added, but I had no other choice at the time. Brother Ku, you and Protector Bien were not in the sect, and I was imprisoned in the bone prison. Faced with a life or death dilemma, I had no choice but to make a deal with Wu Mengchuan. Bien Yuqing snorted. As a result, after Sect Master came out, he went on a killing spree. Almost the entire Blue Feather Sect was slaughtered. Only a few people were quick enough to rely on Sect Master to survive. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully. Protector Bien was one of them. This queen. Bien Yuqing coldly snorted. This queen was just lucky. A month after that incident, this queen and Ku Wu returned to the sect, but how could we have known that the sect had already undergone great changes? By the time we reacted, it was already too late to escape. However, Sect Master didn't kill me. Perhaps, he also felt that it wouldn't be good to kill everyone and leave him all alone. In any case, he spared my life. It's just that. At this point, her face was filled with hatred. This queen has been sealed by him. In the future, I will have to follow his lead. So that's how it is. Yang Kai showed a look of understanding. This matter was caused by you, little brat. Speak, how do you want this queen to punish you? Bien Yuqing looked at Yang Kai gloomily, obviously wanting to teach him a lesson. Yang Kai smiled and said, Protector Bien, since you chose to take action against Wu Mengchuan many years ago, you must know something about him and what kind of person he is. To such a person, either they directly cut the weeds and eliminate the roots, or they don't provoke them. Not only did you provoke him, you even imprisoned and tortured him. Didn't you think that there would be retribution? Bien Yuqing frowned and stared at Yang Kai. What do you want to say? Yang Kai said, I just want to say that even without me, Wu Mengchuan would have escaped, so what happened to you has nothing to do with me. Nonsense. Bien Yuqing's face was filled with anger. Yang Kai spread his hands and said, Moreover, isn't Protector Bien fine now? Although a restriction had been placed on him, he was still a descendant of that person. When he achieves meteoric success in the future, do you still have to worry about not having riches and honor? It's just a temporary humiliation. Can't Protector Bien wait? Bien Yuqing looked at him coldly and snorted. Why does it sound like this queen took advantage of you? Should I thank you properly? There's no need for that. Yang Kai waved his hand. Bian Yuqing said helplessly, anyway, it's too late to say anything now. This queen and Ku Wu can only take one step at a time. Seeing that she didn't really mean to seek revenge on him, Yang Kai breathed a sigh of relief. Ku Wu smiled and said, Protector Bian and I came to the Four Seasons realm this time. We were also instructed by Sect Master to represent Blue Feather Sect. When we saw you appear in Azure Sun Temple, we called you over to ask you something. Blue Feather Sect was a small sect. Although it did not have a master from the Emperor realm, it originally had several masters from the Third Order Dao Source realm, so it had at least 2 spots to enter the Four Seasons realm. Wu Mengchuan's killing spree last time caused Blue Feather Sect to be short of manpower, so only Bian Yuqing and Ku Wu could come. Information about the Four Seasons realm? Yang Kai raised his brow. Yes, Bian Yuqing nodded. Don't tell me you don't know anything. Since you can mix in with Azure Sun Temple, you must know more than us, right? Yang Kai frowned and pondered for a while before saying, I do have information. However, it's their sect's secret, so I can't disclose it. Bian Yuqing smiled slightly and said, if you don't say it, and I don't say it, who will know? Yang Kai shook his head. Bian Yuqing's face changed, and when she was about to say something, Yang Kai said, the only thing I can tell you is, Star Seals will appear in the Four Seasons realm this time. Star Seals. Ku Wu frowned, obviously not knowing what this was. However, Bian Yuqing vaguely seemed to think of something and after pondering for a while, exclaimed, you mean, a pass to enter the Shattered Star Sea? Yes. Yang Kai nodded. The Shattered Star Sea? Ku Wu finally reacted and exclaimed in a low voice, his face filled with shock. Yang Kai smiled and said, you two should work hard. If we meet in the Four Seasons realm, maybe we will have a chance to join forces. After saying so, he ignored the two and walked back the way he came. For him, neither Bian Yuqing nor Ku Wu were familiar with him. The little care he received in Blue Feather Sect was enough to be repaid with the information just now. From now on, he had no grievances with these two. If they had no malicious intentions towards him, then everything was fine, but if they really wanted to do something to him, then they shouldn't blame him for being ruthless. After all, they were now Wu Mengchuan's people. Yang Kai was very afraid of this descendant of the great emperors of the heaven-devouring great emperor. At that time, Wu Mengchuan actually taught him a complete set of heaven-devouring great emperor's secret art. This was the secret art of the heaven-devouring great emperor. The great emperors of the heaven-devouring great emperor relied on this secret art to become the #1 master in the star boundary at that time. Yang Kai would never believe that Wu Mengchuan had no ulterior motives. It was just that he really didn't understand what the other party wanted to do. He even did not hesitate to teach him the heaven-devouring great emperor's secret art. He did not cultivate this secret art himself but gave it to his embodiment. During this time, his embodiment's strength had improved a lot. From his embodiment, Yang Kai also understood the heaven-defying effects of this secret art. If it weren't for some scruples, he would have been tempted to cultivate it himself. Thinking about this all the way, Yang Kai soon returned to Azure Sun Temple's encampment. Everyone was quietly meditating to restore themselves, seizing the last bit of time to maintain their perfect state. Only Xiao Baiyi opened his eyes and glanced at him, but he did not say anything. Time passed by day. As time passed, the world energy in this nameless mountain valley became denser and denser, until it finally reached the point where the world energy turned into mist. If one looked down from a high altitude, the entire mountain valley was wrapped in a white mist. This mist was not really mist, but a sign of the condensation of world energy. The cultivation environment here had also reached an unimaginable level. If someone could cultivate in this place for a long time, the speed at which their strength improved would naturally be extraordinary. Unfortunately, this was just a sign before the opening of the sealed world. Even a sect like Star Soul Palace did not have such a jaw-dropping cultivation treasure land. Finally, at a certain moment on the 4th day after everyone arrived in this nameless mountain valley, a strange sound suddenly rang out. The sound was faintly discernible, as if it came from the void, making it difficult to grasp. Immediately afterward, The world energy suddenly shook and boiled, the clouds tumbling, madly converging towards a certain location. And that location was the center of the entire valley, which was also the only empty area. It seemed that all the sects knew that the entrance to the sealed world was here, so no force was stationed here. At this moment, all the cultivators opened their eyes and looked in that direction. It's begun. In Star Soul Palace's encampment, Xiao Yuyang shouted in a low voice. All the disciples were excited and secretly rubbed their hands. The entrance is about to open. In Azure Sun Temple's encampment, Jiao Shueting looked at the 20 people in front of her and said, "This elder hopes that after entering, you can travel together as much as possible to avoid being left alone." Of course, if anyone insists on acting rashly, then this elder did not say anything. After a pause, she continued, "I hope all of you can return safely." Xia Sheng grinned and said, "Elder Jiao, don't worry, this disciple will take good care of them." Jiao Shueting nodded and did not say anything more. Instead, she turned her head and looked at the place where the world energy was converging. At this moment, all the world energy in the world was swarming towards that place. The swirling world energy brought with it a whistling wind, causing sand and stones to fly in the mountain valley, but this did not affect the observation of the Dao Source Realm cultivators. After all the world energy rushed there, it was as if it had fallen into a black hole and disappeared all of a sudden. At that point, the space suddenly became unstable. And as more world energy poured in, the instability became more and more obvious. Until a certain moment, the void suddenly cracked open, and a crack visible to the naked eye appeared. The world energy continued to pour in, and the crack grew bigger and bigger. Looking at the sky, it was as if a great master had opened a skylight. From the skylight, some scenery on the other side could be vaguely seen, ethereal and distorted. This situation lasted for half an hour. After half an hour, the world energy in the mountain valley, which was so dense that it had turned into fog, was completely gone. All of it poured into the void crack. At this moment, there was no more world energy in the entire mountain valley, and the desolate scene of the past was restored. And that crack had become more than 100 meters long and 50 meters high. "The entrance is open," someone exclaimed. "Let's go." Some people couldn't wait and used their movement skills to fly over the heads of the crowd and directly rushed towards the narrow entrance. They should be a cultivator from a small sect. Like the Blue Feather sect, there were only 2 people, 1 man and 1 woman. They seemed to have cultivated some kind of joint secret technique. Once they used it, their speed was as fast as lightning. The 2 people turned into streams of light and rushed into the entrance first. They seemed to think that they would have more advantages if they went in earlier. Unfortunately, things didn't go as they wished. Several cultivators from the Emperor realm just looked at them coldly. They had no intention of stopping them and just watched quietly. Sigh. Jiao Shueting sighed. It seems that there are people who don't care about their lives every time. As soon as her voice fell, 2 screams came from the void. Chapter 2138. The 2 cultivators, a man and a woman from an unknown small sect, were blocked by an invisible barrier the moment they rushed into the entrance of the Four Seasons realm, unable to enter. Not only that, the barrier that blocked the 2 of them seemed to contain an extremely ferocious killing power, directly twisting the 2 into a mass of minced meat and blood mist before exploding in the air. These 2 people had actually died in such an inexplicable manner. How could this be? Down below, many cultivators cried out in alarm, their complexions pale. If the entrance to the Four Seasons realm was so dangerous, how could they enter? It was likely that more than half of the people present would not be able to pass through the entrance and would all die here. However, most of the Dao Source realm cultivators did not change their expressions, as if they had expected this. Yang Kai sighed slightly. He obtained the jade slip from Azure Sun Temple and naturally knew that the actions of the 2 cultivators were somewhat rash. If they wanted to enter the Four Seasons realm, they could not force their way in. Otherwise, no matter how high their cultivation was, they would end up like the 2 of them, dying without a complete corpse. If they wanted to enter the Four Seasons realm, they could only wait for the guidance of a mysterious force over there. This was the advantage of having information. If Kai Yang had come here alone and was ignorant, he would have rushed in directly, which would have led to some unpredictable consequences. At this moment, a transparent energy ball suddenly emerged from the crack. The energy ball was like a bubble, quietly suspended in mid-air. When this energy ball appeared, the disciples of Star Soul Palace immediately took action. 10 of the 40 disciples rushed into the bubble one after another. The bubble was constantly distorted and deformed, but it never burst. It looked extremely magical. Strangely enough, the size of the bubble seemed to be just enough for 10 people to stand on. After the 10 Dao Source Realm cultivators got inside, there was not much space inside. At the same time, the bubble shrank slightly and floated towards the entrance at a very fast speed. The next moment, he then entered the entrance and disappeared without a trace. After seeing this scene, the cultivator who came to participate in the Four Seasons realm for the first time knew what was going on. Obviously, the bubble was the key to entering the Four Seasons realm. After a few breaths, another bubble emerged from the crack, and the Star Soul Palace once again sent out 10 disciples to act. This cycle repeated for a total of 4 times before the disciples of Star Soul Palace had all left. Star Soul Palace was the overlord of the Southern Territory, and being the first batch to enter the Four Seasons realm naturally made others speechless. However, it was unknown how the Emperor realm had negotiated the order of entry. After the Star Soul Palace, the 20 disciples of the Heavenly Martial Holy Land were divided into 2 groups and entered the Four Seasons realm one after another. Azure Sun Temple was in the 3rd batch. When it was Azure Sun Temple's turn, Xia Sheng took the lead and pointed out 9 people to follow him. Following the guidance of the mysterious bubble, they entered the secret realm. Yang Kai and the other 9 people followed closely behind. The bubbles appeared very magical. When Yang Kai entered, he didn't feel any resistance. Instead, he felt as if he had fallen into water. It was soft all around, but he didn't feel suffocated. And when he was wrapped in the bubble and passed through the void crack, he didn't sense any danger at all. His vision blurred, and by the time Yang Kai regained his senses, he was already in another place. The 10 people were still wrapped in the bubble, suspended in mid-air. Soon, the bubble burst and no longer existed. Everyone hurriedly circulated their qi and floated in mid-air. From the information recorded in the previous Jade Slip, Yang Kai learned that every batch of cultivator that was guided into the Four Seasons realm by the bubble would appear in the same place, but the location of the cultivator in different batches was somewhat difficult to guess. So at this moment, the 10 people were still together. Looking around, there were no other cultivator figures around, and he didn't know where the dozens of people who entered the Four Seasons realm before had been transmitted to. The second batch of 10 people from Azure Sun Temple was headed by Xiao Baiyi. After all, Xiao Baiyi ranked 2nd in the sect martial arts competition, second only to Xia Sheng. This was also discussed in advance. He and Xia Sheng would each lead a team. The moment after the bubble burst, Xiao Baiyi took out a communication artifact from his space ring and poured his divine sense into it, as if he wanted to see if Xia Sheng and the others were nearby. But after waiting for a while, there was no response, so Xiao Baiyi had no choice but to put away the communication artifact. This should be the territory of summer, right? In the team, Murong Xiao Xiao, who had been looking around, suddenly asked. The place where everyone appeared was scorching hot, and the air contained extremely rich fire attribute spirit power. The temperature was extremely high, the ground was dry and cracked, and there was very little vegetation. Obviously, this was the territory of summer, which was famous for its heat. It should be. Xiao Baiyi gently nodded. When he was about to say something again, his expression suddenly froze, and he turned his head to look in one direction. At the same time, Yang Kai's face also sank, and he shouted in a low voice, "Something is coming." Xiao Baiyi glanced at him in amazement, secretly shocked by Yang Kai's keen senses. "What do you mean?" Murong Xiao Xiao asked suspiciously. There was no need for Yang Kai to explain anything. Just as her voice fell, a series of thumping sounds suddenly came from far away, as if a behemoth was moving quickly towards them. And the earth was shaking. Everyone looked shocked, and they all secretly urged their source chi to be on guard. The sound was getting closer and louder, and the shaking of the earth became more and more obvious. Less than 10 breaths after Yang Kai spoke, several streams of light suddenly appeared in front of them, rushing towards them frantically. The leading stream of light was red and white, extremely dazzling, and exuded an aura that made everyone feel familiar and fearful. Wu Chang. Xiao Baiyi's face sank. He did not expect that he would encounter Heavenly Marshal Holy Land's evil star as soon as he entered the Four Seasons realm. He also saw the previous battle between Wu Chang and Xia Sheng and secretly felt that this person was a great enemy. If he encountered him alone, his chances of winning were less than 30%. At this moment, Wu Chang and several elites of Heavenly Marshal Holy Land were rushing in his direction. Xiao Baiyi's nerves suddenly became tense. Because of the previous battle between him and Xia Sheng, Wu Chang could already be said to be an enemy of Azure Sun Temple. If he wanted to kill at this time, Xiao Baiyi was not confident that he could stop him. Just as he was secretly gritting his teeth and cursing, Kai Yang's expression suddenly changed and he shouted, "It's not coming for us, something is chasing after them. Wu Chang is being chased." In the team, a male cultivator heard this and his face changed abruptly. Wu Chang was already a cultivator in the Third Order Dao Source realm, and the #1 rising star of Heavenly Marshal Holy Land. An existence that could make him flee frantically was at least equivalent to the Emperor realm. There were existences of this level in the Four Seasons realm. Over the years, many cultivator who entered the Four Seasons realm had died in the hands of these existences without being able to fight back. While they were talking, the thing that was chasing Wu Chang and the others also came into view. About 100 feet behind Wu Chang, there was a monster with a height of more than 100 feet. It was wrapped in flames and had crimson eyes. It moved its 4 limbs and sprinted across the ground, leaving a long trail of red light behind it. Every time it leaped, it seemed to ignore the barrier of space. In an instant, it covered a distance of more than 100 feet, shaking the earth. Flame Beast. Xiao Baiyi's face turned pale as he exclaimed, "This is the territory of the Flame Beast." In the information recorded in the Jade Slip of Azure Sun Temple, there was a mention of this Flame Beast in the territory of Summer. This was a genuine 12th Order monster beast, which could exert a powerful strength equivalent to the Emperor realm. The place where the Flame Beast lived was also listed as a forbidden area in the Jade Slip, and disciples were not allowed to visit it easily. Everyone did not expect that they would be so unlucky as to appear in the territory of the Flame Beast as soon as they were taken in. However, it seemed that Wu Chang and the others had even worse luck. They probably appeared directly near the habitat of the Flame Beast, which led to this pursuit. Roar! The Flame Beast that had been chasing Wu Chang and the others saw that it could not catch up for a long time and roared in anger. Along with the roar, a fiery red light suddenly shot out from its mouth. The space was suddenly pierced through, and the fiery red light, which contained unimaginable lethality, penetrated from north to south, stretching for more than a dozen kilometers. Wu Chang reacted quickly. After perceiving the murderous intent behind him, his figure paused for a moment before he rushed upwards, avoiding this killing move by a hair's breadth. However, the others were not so lucky. One of the Heavenly Marshal Holy Land disciples failed to avoid it and was directly hit by the fiery red light, turning into ashes before he could even let out a scream. Another disciple's arm was grazed and directly melted, letting out an earth-shattering scream. "Why aren't you running?" Yang Kai shouted in a low voice and took the lead in summoning the Dao Source grade high-rank wooden boat. He stepped on it and pushed his source chi, causing the wooden boat to fly away at lightning speed. With his reminder, the remaining 9 people from Azure Sun Temple who were stunned finally recovered and summoned their own flight-type artifacts, transforming into streams of light as they fled in the direction of the Flame Beast. In fact, they could not be blamed for not being determined enough. The main reason was that the person from Heavenly Marshal Holy Land had died too suddenly. He was an elite disciple of Heavenly Marshal Holy Land, not a small fry from a small sect. In other words, the dead cultivator was on the same level as them. Just like that, he disappeared without a trace. If they were in his shoes and encountered such a thing, they would definitely end up in the same situation. Therefore, the visual impact and mental shock that the scene just now brought to them was extremely strong. Following Yang Kai, the 9 people fled as fast as they could. They had no intention of stopping to fight with the flame beast. With the strength of the people present, there was no way to resist such a terrifying existence. The consequences of being impulsive would only lead to death. At this time, the remaining people from Heavenly Martial Holy Land also flew not far behind them. However, they were also smart. Seeing that someone was taking the blame, they quickly scattered and ran in other directions. The flame beast did not care which sect these people belonged to. In its eyes, anyone who trespassed on its territory must die, so it still chased after them. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.